Chapter 5142. Yi Xiangnan smiled. Master Chang knows more about the underworld than I do. Am I right, Master Chang? He called him Master Chang. Why did Master Chang feel that this gigolo was mocking him? Master Chang narrowed his eyes and chuckled softly. Bossy is right. We should be more careful. Actually, 200 million is just a drop in the bucket for me. He wrote a new check and tore it off for Yi Xiangnan. Yi Xiangnan took it and looked at it. After confirming that there was no problem, he asked, "Where's Lu Hong?" "In the hospital. She's almost recovered." When Master Chang mentioned this, his breathing became chaotic. "CEO Yi, don't think that this woman is a good person. She's very powerful. She was clearly enjoying herself, but she stabbed me after that. Should I get angry?" Yi Xiangnan recalled that Chang Zheng was hospitalized. What he said was true. Then he thought about Lu Hong's usual style. This matter was probably not the responsibility of one party. However, he knew that Master Chang didn't care about human lives. If it wasn't for Sumu, Lu Hong's life would have been over. He didn't feel that it was a pity. A superior like Yi Xiangnan rarely had sympathy. Besides, it had nothing to do with him. However, other than Sumu begging him, there was another reason why he asked the Wen family for help. It was because his mother, Wen Yuan, and Sumu were friends. For this reason, he had to help. He knew that Sumu was too embarrassed to ask his mother, so she begged him. In fact, it was the same for her to beg his mother. But now that he had a wife for free, he was obedient. CEO Ye's life immediately reached its peak. He was in a great mood. Holding the check, Master Chang was still sitting behind him. When she recovers, she will naturally walk home by herself. No one will tie her down. Yi Xiangnan curled his lips. I believe in Mr. Chang's integrity. He walked out and got into the Bentley parked at the entrance. He was elegant and graceful. Master Chang gritted his teeth and squinted his eyes as he watched. One of his subordinates at the side raised his voice and said, "Master Chang, if you ask me, just put a bomb in his car and send him to heaven. Then, no one would dare to go against Master Chang and Miss Su would belong to Master Chang." When Master Chang heard this, he immediately slapped him. With a cold expression, he said, "Are you looking for death? Do you know who that is? If you want to send him to heaven, why don't you send me to heaven?" Master Chang's masculinity was especially strong. Send him to heaven and we all have to play with him. In the past, if they didn't mess with you, they would turn a blind eye. Send the Wen family's gigolo to heaven? Was your head kicked by a donkey? The underling didn't dare to make a sound and cowered there. Master Chang's anger was especially great. You listen to me clearly. I'll say it once. You're not allowed to touch that pretty boy with the surname Yi, and you're not allowed to touch my woman. If even a single strand of hair is missing, I'll skin you. The underling trembled in shock, and Master Chang, didn't you say that Miss Su married that pretty boy CEO Yi? Why is she Master Chang's woman again? Master Chang slapped him again. I said that she's my woman, so she's my woman. Do you have a problem with that? That underling didn't dare to have a problem. Sob, so pitiful. Master Chang narrowed his eyes and stared at the entrance of the tea house. Let's go to the hospital. Are we going to see reporter Lu? The underling asked carefully. Master Chang stopped in his tracks and narrowed his eyes. If we don't see her, are we going to see your mother? The underling rubbed his nose and felt wronged. Master Chang's temper was too bad. No wonder Miss Su didn't like him. They also felt that Master Chang deserved it. Chapter 5143. Very quickly, Master Chang arrived at the hospital. In the private VIP ward, Sister Hong leaned against the headboard and scrolled through her phone. Master Chang was not in a good mood, and seeing how calm she looked, he felt even worse. He took the phone from her hand and threw it into a container at the side. Instantly, the phone's lifespan ended. Sister Hong was extremely speechless. She guessed that he must have suffered some kind of loss again and came to look for trouble with her. Sister Hong did not want to bother with him, but she was also on guard because this mad dog would really bite at any time. Her injuries had just recovered a little, and she did not want to be killed again. Looking at her gaze, Master Chang let out a cold smile and sat at the side with a folding fan. Don't act like a virgin. I've already told your ex-husband about your history. Your ex-husband is now in the hospital, and his wife is taking care of him together. Just think about it, it's such a blessing. Say, why are you so stubborn? It's just a small matter of your body, it's not a big deal. Why do you have to be so stubborn? Look at you, you gave up on a man who is so infatuated with you. Sister Hong knew that he was going to talk about Zhang Fucai kneeling again. She did not want to hear it, not because she hated it, but because she was afraid to face it. She felt a little sad, right? That damn fatty must be feeling bad. Sister Hong and Zhang Fucai had been together for so long, and a lot of the hatred between them had faded. Now that this happened, they were more like old friends. She was silent, and Master Chang moved closer to her face. Thinking about that fatty again? Why don't I apologize to you, get you that fatty, and you guys can continue to be husband and wife? Sister Hong could not stand his frivolity. Chang Zheng, are you always like this? You don't even ask before deciding someone else's life. Have you discussed it with me before? How do you know that I will be willing? Didn't you deserve it when I stabbed you? Don't think of everyone as a spineless bitch like Su Jian. Master Chang was scolded, and he was very unhappy. He sat on the sofa and lit a cigar leisurely. It's just a physical thing. Didn't they say that you're not a little girl? Besides, you were quite happy at the time and didn't resist. There's no need to be so awkward afterward. If you didn't act like that, maybe we could still be together for a while. Other than your bad temper, you're much better than Su Jian. Sister Hong's reply was to throw a pillow at him. Shameless bastard, get lost. After she said that, Master Chang's face darkened. He licked his lips and said, do you know why I'm in a bad mood? Sister Hong's mouth was moving up and down. It was obvious that she was extremely angry. Master Chang chuckled coldly, Yi Xiangnan only took 200 million from me, and I still have to let you go. Great reporter Lu, you've really found yourself a good backer. Lu Hong was stunned for a moment and immediately realized that Su Mu had saved her. Master Chang laughed coldly again. Smart. If it weren't for Su Mu, I would have killed you as easily as killing a chicken. After Master Chang said that, he stood up. Don't provoke me in the future. Otherwise, I'll fall out with you. He left and the door closed with a bang. Sister Hong was still in a daze, not understanding what was going on. Did this mean that he was going to let her go? She could leave now? Sister Hong thought about it and immediately jumped off the bed. She looked out of the window. Indeed, after Master Chang left, his subordinates left as well. She was indeed free. Chapter 5144. Starlight HQ. Yi Xiangnan's car stopped and Secretary Li walked up to him. Su Mu went to report today and performed well. She even did a trial broadcast. I was watching from the side and felt that it was pretty good. Yi Xiangnan closed the car door and adjusted his tie. He said elegantly, of course she's not bad. Do you think my taste is bad? She herself only knows how to sell shoes. A smart woman would have climbed up long ago. She's so stupid. He complained about Su Mu to Secretary Li as they walked. If it wasn't for me, I'm afraid she would still be a doormat in the station. Hearing this, Secretary Li was a little touched. CEO Yi could say all this to her, which meant that she was still his confidant. Secretary Li listened and gave some professional advice, raising her status once again. She was half a bestie of Su Mu. Su Mu and CEO Yi were always on and off, always messing around. But from a bystander's point of view, CEO Yi had an inexplicable possessiveness toward Su Mu. This was probably a common problem of males in the animal world. They had a strong possessiveness towards the female that they had given birth to and wouldn't let other males touch her again. Secretary Li sighed. It was already 2019 and CEO Yi still had such thoughts. He was really a traditional good man. The moment the dogman said that, it was the end of the story. As they chatted, they reached the top floor. Yi Xiangnan took off his coat and threw it on the sofa. He untied his tie. Ask Su Mu to come and see me. Secretary Li was also speechless. She coughed lightly. CEO Yi, it's working hours now. What are you thinking? This isn't your home. Yi Xiangnan narrowed his eyes. She's my subordinate. Isn't it normal for her to come and see me? Secretary Li was even more speechless. Su Mu is just a lowly employee now. She comes to see CEO Yi whenever she wants. How do you think she will do her job in the future? Will anyone dare to ask her to do anything in the future? If CEO Yi wants her to accompany you, she can just be a second secretary. Why do you want her to be an anchor? When Secretary Li said that, Yi Xiangnan felt that it was reasonable. He narrowed his eyes and said, you're right. He stood up and took his coat. Let's go for an inspection. Secretary Li was about to cry. Even if they were newlyweds, they shouldn't be like this. As it turned out, Secretary Li was right. After Yi Xiannan parachuted into one of the office floors on the 20th floor, the entire floor was in an uproar, especially when the female employees ran around telling everyone that CEO Yi was here, CEO Yi was here. Su Mu sat in front of her desk, reading some documents and listening to some broadcasts. She didn't hear the news because she was wearing earphones. Otherwise, she would definitely hide in the washroom. She didn't want Yi Xiangnan to take special care of her. That man's interest in her was so strong that it was scary. Yi Xiannan was always surrounded wherever she went in Starlight Entertainment, not to mention that this floor was just one of the stations under the company. The station manager personally greeted her and brought CEO Yi on an inspection tour. She was a female higher-up and was quite understanding. She called all the pretty female anchors in the station over and greeted in unison, "Hello, CEO Yi." Yi Xiangnan frowned and stopped. His eyes swept across their faces one by one. Fortunately, he didn't see the person he was thinking of. "Director Wang," he said, "those who know are a row of anchors. Those who don't would think that I'm in a nightclub. Don't they have to work? Are you a leader or a pimp?" Chapter 5145. Director Wang panicked. He looked at Secretary Li and tried to figure out what was going on. Wasn't it like this before? CEO Yi didn't touch her but liked to look at her. Which man wouldn't like this? CEO Yi liked her in the past. Now that Sumu was in the company, how could he like her? Besides, he was still a newlywed. He was more interested in Sumu. Yi Xiangnan stared at Director Wang coldly. Director Wang seemed to be scalded by something. He immediately waved his hand and dismissed the female anchors. Only when he had the chance could he ask CEO Yi's confidant, Secretary Li, what's going on with CEO Yi? Sumu's identity was kept secret on this floor. Stars Building was huge. Only the headquarters of Stars Building knew about the incident. The TV stations under them didn't know about the relationship between Sumu and Yi Xiangnan. Besides, didn't they get a divorce? No one would think about it. Everyone here called Sumu Xiao Su. Director Wang asked. Secretary Li smiled. CEO Yi has been a vegetarian recently. He likes to eat at home. Director Wang didn't know if he understood. Secretary Li smiled. Let's go. CEO Yi won't be happy if he can't find her. People like Secretary Li were like relatives of the Emperor to Chief Wang. She carefully tried to please Secretary Li by treating her to meals and giving her bags. Secretary Li rejected her. Although she was a little greedy, she would not stretch her hand so far. The nightclub would not be happy about it. She was treated well as a secretary. CEO Yi would give her a big red packet from time to time. Besides, the pigeon egg was given by Master Cheng, but CEO Yi allowed it. It was a good benefit. Secretary Li spoke vaguely and did not give a correct answer. Until now, Director Wang still could not figure out what was going on. He thought about it and felt that CEO Yi wouldn't be so free. It must be a sudden impulse. On the other side, Yi Xiangnan had already strolled to Sumu's office. There were 8 people working in a space of about 30 square meters. Sumu had her head lowered as she tried to listen to a recording with her headphones on. Yi Xiangnan stood beside her and tilted his head to ask Director Wang, "Are you new here?" Sumu was arranged by Secretary Li, and Director Wang couldn't figure out her background. He only knew that she had someone in the headquarters of Stars Entertainment. At this time, when he heard Yi Xiangnan's question, his heart skipped a beat and he began to ponder. How should I answer? After thinking for a while, Director Wang said cautiously, "He's new." "Oh right, he's someone arranged by Secretary Li. I haven't found out the details yet. Which university did he graduate from? How is his business ability? We have to assess all these. Don't worry, CEO Yi. I won't let anyone come in through the back door. Those who stay in our TV station must be competent." These words were said with sincerity. Sumu didn't hear it because she was wearing her headphones. She was very focused, but everyone in the office was looking at her and CEO Yi. They felt that CEO Yi was going to cause trouble for the new Little Su. However, they felt that this ordinary Little Su looked familiar. Isn't it because the photo of Master Cheng's confession was too blurry? And they didn't expect that the female lead would work with them. At this time, Yi Xiangnan said softly, "She didn't graduate from university." Ah. Director Wang was dumbfounded. Then, he looked at Secretary Li. Secretary Li pretended not to see it. Chapter 5146. Secretary Li pretended not to see it, but Director Wang was implying that she was in deep trouble. Why did she send someone who hadn't even graduated from university to me? What should I do? Just as Director Wang was about to speak, Yi Xiangnan spoke again. She doesn't have much work experience. She used to be a shoe seller. When he said that, he was playing a prank on Sumu. Director Wang was about to cry. Director Wang was about to cry. Her favorite thing to do was to flatter others, for fear that the leader would have a bad impression of her. Now that she heard Yi Xiannan's words, she almost fainted. Thus, she decided that no matter who it was that pushed in, Sumu must not be allowed to stay. After all, Director Yi was the most powerful person in Stars Entertainment, and she couldn't afford to offend him. Thus, Director Wang's expression turned ugly. "I didn't know anything about this." "Don't worry, CEO Yi, we won't let someone like her stay. Send her back to the Human Resource Department immediately." She glanced at Secretary Li. She still felt that she had offended Secretary Lee, but CEO Yi seemed to be reprimanding her. Secretary Lee was speechless. Director Wang must have been too engrossed in being an official, to the point that she had lost her eyesight. How free must CEO Yi be to ask a new, insignificant person? He must be interested in her. Moreover, CEO Yi didn't look the least bit unhappy. His face was filled with the fanatical expression of a little boy looking at his favorite toy. Secretary Lee cursed in her heart. No wonder Director Wang didn't have a boyfriend even though she was in her 40s. Her EQ was really low. But Director Wang didn't know that. She took off Sumu's earphones and said calmly, "Report to the Human Resource Department later." Sumu was surprised. She looked at Director Wang, and Yi Xiangnan beside her. She immediately realized that it was a prank. She was speechless. Yi Xiangnan. Director Wang was going crazy. How dare you call CEO Yi by his name? I don't think you need to go to the Human Resource Department. Just go back. At this moment, Yi Xiangnan looked at his watch. It's time to get off work. Let's go home. As he spoke, he tidied up the personal things on her desk and said to Secretary Lee, "Help her tidy up." Secretary Lee smiled and said yes. He said goodbye to CEO Yi and Miss Su. From his politeness, it was easy to tell who Miss Su was. Everyone on the scene was dumbfounded, looking at CEO Yi elegantly taking away the newbie who hadn't graduated from the university. The newbie Little Su is the legendary heroine who is favored by God? Secretary Lee packed up his things and said to the dumbfounded Director Wang, "Sumu is CEO Ye's wife. You should know what to do in the future. I heard that all the anchors have their own private office. Arrange for 5 minutes and the nightclub will be happy." Everyone was still in a daze, unable to come to their senses. Secretary Lee further reminded, "CEO Yi is very concerned about Miss Su now. You see, he specially came to work because he was afraid that she would be bullied. There are some things that CEO Yi can say, but you can't say." Saying that she hadn't graduated from the university and that she sold shoes, CEO Yi was warning them not to talk nonsense in the future. They didn't know that CEO Yi was really concerned about her. After Secretary Lee finished, Director Wang heaved a sigh of relief and complained for a while, "Why didn't you say so earlier? You scared me to death." As he said that, he wanted to treat her to dinner. Anyway, he wanted to take the opportunity to treat her. Secretary Lee declined, saying that CEO Yi still needed her, so she left politely. Chapter 5147. Secretary Lee declined, saying that CEO Yi still needed her, so she left in a decent manner. At this point, the rumor that Sumu was CEO Ye's wife had spread throughout the station, and it was also a fact that CEO Yi loved his wife very much. In the future, even CEO Wang would have to act according to Sumu's mood. She was a very favored person, and the rumored Lin Lu was not worth mentioning at all. Secretary Lee left. How could she be a third wheel? She got off work directly. Yi Xiangnan took Sumu to his office. The exclusive elevator was under maintenance, so they took an ordinary elevator. As a result, when the elevator door opened, all the staff in the elevator saw CEO Yi and Mrs. Yi standing side by side. CEO Yi was pulling each other, and Mrs. Yi looked reluctant. Oh my God! What kind of famous scene did they see? Everyone secretly looked at it, then looked up and pretended not to see it. Someone secretly took a picture with his phone and uploaded it to the corporate network. Hee, big news, famous scene. Sumu immediately flung his hand away with a face full of shame and anger. CEO Yi was thick-skinned. "We are legally husband and wife, what's the big deal?" Sumu was about to speak when her phone rang. She saw that it was Sister Hong, so she picked it up immediately. Yi Xiangnan was not very happy. Sister Hong again. It was better for that woman to fall into Chang Zheng's hands. She probably wanted to ask for a meal the moment she came out. Just when he was unhappy, Sumu covered the phone and asked him softly, "Sister Hong is back and asked if we want to have a meal together?" Yi Xiangnan originally had no feelings for Lu Hong. A woman always looking for something to do and was bold and unrestrained. He didn't want to agree, but Sumu said we. He put his hand in his pocket. "Let's go." After saying that, he found that the elevator that should have gone down was still there, and the audience was still there. CEO Yi gave them a look, and they finally closed the elevator door. Then he looked at Sumu. Sumu had already hung up. "Sister Hong is treating us to hot pot." Yi Xiangnan didn't make a sound and just stood there. He had clearly agreed before, but now Sumu didn't know what he meant, so she said softly, "Say something." Yi Xiangnan looked at her. "You want to go? Consider it a welcoming dinner for Sister Hong," Sumu said pitifully. At this moment, there was even a hint of pleading in her tone. Yi Xiangnan said arrogantly, "You're not allowed to deny our relationship in the company in the future. You're not allowed to fool around." Sumu was a little angry. You're the one who's messing around. I won't do it again. If I must, I can only ask Mrs. Yi. He smiled, then took her into the elevator and went to the office. He still had something to deal with. As he flipped through the documents, he asked, "What time is Lu Hong's appointment?" 7:30. Sumu said. Yi Xiangnan nodded and sat behind the wide desk. He said in a low voice, "Go and get me a glass of water." Sumu didn't move. "I'm not your secretary. Are you burning the bridge after crossing the river?" He looked up at her. "Don't forget that you're Mrs. Yi now, and a small employee of Star's Entertainment. What's wrong with giving me a cup of tea?" Sumu snorted and went to pour a cup for him. Obviously, she was still unhappy. She sat on the sofa and read the news. Yi Xiangnan took a sip of water and then smiled lightly. "Do you know that you're spoiled now?" Chapter 51-48. Really? Why don't I think so? Sumu still snorted. Yi Xiangnan smiled. "That's because you're used to it. Try talking to me like that with someone else, huh?" Sumu was speechless. "Then what do you want me to do to you, CEO Yi?" Yi Xiangnan lowered his head and flipped through the documents again. "What do you think?" Sumu smiled coldly. "You want to be like Secretary Li in the company and be a qualified wife at home?" This time, he finally put down the things in his hands and walked to her side. He stood in front of her and looked down at her. "Sumu, you just need to be a good wife. It's the same everywhere." Whether it was in Star's Entertainment or in the department she was in, because she was Yi Xiangnan's wife, it didn't matter whether she was outstanding or not. No one dared to ask CEO Ye's wife to work overtime, and no one dared to say that she didn't graduate from college. This was the hidden benefit of being a CEO Ye's wife. He didn't allow her to say no. He didn't want his wife to work overtime every day. He married her because it was fun. He wanted her to take care of Cymbidium Chinense and himself. If she worked overtime every day, would she still be his wife? She was just an employee. Thinking of this, Yi Xiannan smiled and reached out to hold her sharp chin. "You're already married. You don't have to be so career-minded." Sumu stared at him. Once again, she felt that she really didn't have that much freedom. There were conditions for her to marry him. She had to obey him and listen to him. He had arranged everything well. She just had to cooperate with him in his life. In other words, she was asked to be the wife he wanted, but he might not be the husband she wanted. It was as simple as that. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Yi Xiangnan guessed what she was thinking and chuckled. "It's too late to regret now. Sumu, think about it carefully. You don't mind selling shoes, but your sister Hong won't mind having nothing, not being a reporter, not being able to find a job everywhere, say no more." She turned her head. "Yi Xiangnan, you're a jerk. That bastard made you happy too. You don't mean what you say." He chuckled softly and let her go so that he could settle some of his own matters. After that, Sumu was no longer in the mood. The sofa was originally right next to the French window. As the sky gradually darkened, it was filled with colorful lights outside. In fact, she knew that she didn't know how to be grateful. She didn't know how many women envied her life. To be honest, although Yi Xiangnan was a little bad, he didn't treat her badly. What else could she not be satisfied with? Sumu lowered her eyes. She probably didn't know either. After Yi Xiangnan was done with his work, he covered the golden brush and his gaze landed on her. She was looking at the scenery outside and lying on her stomach. After taking off her coat, she was only wearing a wool skirt, and her waistline could be clearly seen in the back. Thin and slender, but also quite beautiful. Yi Xiangnan walked over and hugged her from behind. "What are you looking at?" Sumu was shocked. She turned her head, and his chin was on her shoulder. She immediately turned her head back and said, "If there's nothing else, can we go?" She looked at the time. It was almost 7 o'clock. Yi Xiangnan suddenly said, "I'll take you to buy a watch later. It's not convenient to keep checking the time with your phone." Sumu instinctively wanted to refuse again, but Yi Xiangnan narrowed his eyes and said, "Sumu, if you refuse, think about the consequences, okay?" She thought about his methods and closed her eyes to avoid thinking about them. Yi Xiangnan smiled with satisfaction. Chapter 51-49. Updated quickly, no pop-up window, free to read. After getting in the car, Sumu fastened the seat belt and suddenly asked, "When can I see Cymbidium Chinense?" Yi Xiangnan started the car and looked at her sideways. "I thought you didn't want your son anymore. Haven't you been happy these days?" Sumu's face was a little hot. She knew that he did it on purpose. He liked to say those private things to embarrass her, and it was indeed very embarrassing. Fortunately, he wouldn't say it in front of others. Yi Xiangnan looked like a standard young master, and he was quite gentle, but he was definitely not a gentleman in private. He was very bad, especially when they were alone. Sumu was very afraid of him. This was also the reason why she was usually a little obedient. She really couldn't stand his means. So she didn't say anything. Yi Xiangnan turned his face, looked at her, and then smiled gently. What, you still don't admit it? Aren't you also very happy? She didn't know why, but she said such a sentence like crazy. As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Xiangnan laughed in a low voice. His laughter was very light and happy, a little more attractive than the night. I'm very happy. I'm very happy every day. Mrs. Yi, do you feel a sense of achievement when I say this? Sumu was not willing to listen to his words directly. She turned her head to one side, and her hair covered half of her face. From his angle, she looked a little more charming. In fact, Sumu was quite a woman. It was probably because she gave birth to a child early. It didn't mean that she looked old, but there was a kind of smell that only women had, which was quite fascinating. This was also the reason why CEO Yi went home every day to eat vegetarian, and the food was quite delicious. He was so bad that Sumu was even more unwilling to talk to him. Later, at the red light, he lifted her hair and touched her face. So hot? Yi Xiangnan. What do you want? She was a little annoyed. Yi Xiangnan stared at her little face, and after a while, he smiled gently. I want, don't you know? Sumu pushed his hand away at once. I don't know. It was obvious that she was a little angry. He did not make things difficult for her because the green light in front of them had turned green. At 7:30 sharp, his car stopped in front of the vegetarian hot pot restaurant. This place was very famous, and Sumu and Yi Xiangnan had been here twice. After getting out of the car, she silently followed behind him and arrived at the private room where she had arranged to meet Sister Hong. When he saw Sister Hong, he naturally felt a little complicated. Sister Hong's injuries had not fully recovered, but it was no longer a big deal. Sister Hong was there, and to their surprise, Editor Zhang was also there. When they entered, the two of them were smoking together like brothers. It was impossible to tell that they were an ex-husband and wife who had a falling out with each other. Sumu also knew that after this incident, Sister Hong and Editor Zhang probably felt like old friends. The love and hate had passed, and all that was left was the cherishing of the past. Zhang Fucai was beaten black and blue, and he still looked a little ugly like a pig. The way he smoked was a little funny. Sumu endured it and greeted them. The other party treated her the same as usual, but he treated Yi Xiangnan differently. On one hand, he had a particularly distinguished status. On the other hand, he had saved Sister Hong. On the other hand, he had done her the honor of eating this meal. Yi Xiangnan had never expected this. Sister Hong couldn't help but take another look at Sumu. Sumu did not say anything. She just sat next to Yi Xiangnan and ate in silence. Sister Hong was very clear that a man like Yi Xiangnan would not release the eagle until he saw the rabbit. She was able to come out. Sumu must have sacrificed a lot. As for how much, it depended on their expressions. Chapter 5150. When Zhang Fucai told her that Sumu and Yi Xiangnan had gotten married, she didn't believe it at first, but now she believed it. She felt a little upset in her heart. Sumu did it for her. But from another point of view, Sister Hong felt that this might be the best ending for Sumu. Cheng Zheng's matter had taught her a great lesson. Without power, she could only be at the mercy of others. Sumu was the woman Cheng Zheng wanted. If it weren't for Yi Xiangnan, Cheng Zheng probably wouldn't have been so polite. This might be the best outcome for Sumu. But Sister Hong didn't say these words. Sumu should have experienced it herself. After this incident, her state of mind had changed a lot. It seemed that she had accepted many things, especially Zhang Fucai. Zhang Fucai was timid. His only shortcoming was that he liked women. Now that he wasn't her husband, it wasn't that he lacked something. She didn't expect that he would be willing to sacrifice himself. Sister Hong sighed. She looked at Yi Xiangnan and Sumu and said, "Today, I must propose a toast to CEO Yi, not only to save me, but also to wish CEO Yi and Mu happiness." Yi Xiangnan didn't care. At this time, he was a little interested. He smiled faintly and raised his glass. Sumu couldn't not give face to Sister Hong, so she also raised her glass. Although she couldn't drink much, she still drank a small glass. When she poured the second glass, Yi Xiangnan stopped her and said, "Don't drink if you can't drink. You're just trying to show off." Sumu looked at him and said, "Just one more small glass." Yi Xiangnan let her drink. "I won't be responsible if you drink too much. Don't expect me to carry you home." Sumu ignored him and talked to Sister Hong. She hadn't seen Sister Hong for many days and she was injured, so she was also very worried. Sister Hong was very carefree. Although she suffered a loss because of Cheng Zheng, she didn't care. After all, she had stabbed Cheng Zheng. On the other side, Yi Xiannan and Zhang Fucai were drinking wine. Fatty was overwhelmed by the favor. Who was this? This was CEO Yi. He was actually drinking wine with him. Editor-in-Chief Zhang was especially careful. He kept saying CEO Yi and the Sun News Agency. Towards the end, he started to speak incoherently. Yi Xiangnan smiled. Let's not talk about business today. How about this, I'll give you an exclusive interview. Just let Sumu prepare it for reporter Lu. He turned to look at Sister Hong and Sumu. Is there a problem? Satellite TV and the Sun News Agency will be synchronized. You'll be the first official case. Sumu is stunned. Sister Hong pushes her and says, hurry up and thank your boss Yi. After Sumu said thank you, she felt that something was wrong. Zhang Fucai scratched his head and chuckled. Aren't we all family? Why are you thanking me? This sentence made the atmosphere a little awkward. Yi Xiangnan looked at Sumu and smiled. You can thank me when you get home. Zhang Fucai chuckled again. He was born a bit of a pervert, and now it added a bit of ambiguity. Sumu was also quite pervert. Sister Hong glared at Zhang Fucai. Sister Hong glared at Zhang Fucai. What are you laughing at? Do you think everyone is like you? Your brain is filled with paint? I heard that when you were hospitalized, Du Meili bullied your wife. Zhang Fucai, you should grow up. She followed you at such a young age. How is she not worse than Du Meili? Zhang Fucai chuckled. Aren't men all the same? Du Meili has already broken up. Chapter 51-51. Sister Hong felt strange, and even Sumu felt that the sun had risen from the west. She looked at Zhang Fucai, but he didn't say the reason. In the end, he didn't say anything. The meal didn't end until 10:30 p.m. Sumu ate a lot, which was all forced by Yi Xiangnan. It was hard not to eat. When they left, Yi Xiangnan put his arm around her shoulders and said goodbye to Sister Hong. He drank, and Sumu was even more drunk. He had already asked the driver to wait for them. When he saw them coming, he immediately drove the car over. Sir, madam, get in the car. Zhang Fucai and Sister Hong stood side by side and looked in that direction. Zhang Fucai sighed. Sumu is really a diamond in South Africa. I didn't expect it. He then turned to look at Sister Hong, say, Sumu isn't that beautiful, how did she get CEO Ye's affection? There are so many beautiful women out there. Sister Hong lit a cigarette and smoked it quietly. She glanced at Zhang Fucai and said, do you think everyone has the same taste as you? Sumu isn't like you, a coquettish slut who keeps climbing into men's beds. She exhaled a mouthful of smoke. After all, they have a child. Sumu's character is also very attractive to men. She looked at Zhang Fucai. Don't you men think that what you can't get is the best? That's the case for CEO Yi now. Hearing that, Zhang Fucai became excited. He took the cigarette from Sister Hong's mouth and took a puff. Then, he licked his old face. Right now, to me, it's best if you can't have it. Sister Hong snorted. Is that so? Zhang Fucai licked his face again. Of course it is. Then he became serious. You see, we can be considered old friends. Lu Hong, all these years, it's not like you can't see through my thoughts. I regret it a lot. At this point, Sister Hong didn't play dumb. It's impossible for us. Zhang Fucai squinted and took a puff of smoke. Why is it impossible? Sister Hong lit another cigarette. Do you want me to be your mistress, or are you going to divorce me and marry me? Let's just treat it as a close confidant. Zhang Fucai shamelessly said, half in truth and half in lie. Sister Hong stood there and stared at him, smoking a cigarette. Zhang Fucai, are you asking for a beating again? You still haven't woken up from the previous beating, right? Zhang Fucai scratched his head. Can we not talk about this? This time, because of you, I was beaten up badly by that guy with the surname Cheng. This is all because of you. As he spoke, he gritted his teeth. If I have the ability, I will definitely kill that bastard. He actually dared to treat you like that. Isn't it just sleeping? Sister Hong didn't seem to mind. What's the big deal? You're the one shouting about killing him. Besides, if you want to kill him, do you think you're going to use all that fat on your body to do it? You don't even know how to train yourself, and you still have the cheek to talk about reconciling with me? Do you think I'll be willing with that body of pork? Du Meili is the only one who doesn't despise you. Zhang Fucai's pig face turned red. Lu Hong, don't go too far. I risked my life for you. Yeah, you got beaten up for nothing. Sister Hong said coldly. She was also deliberately angering him. She was definitely touched, but this was the way they interacted. After so many years, she wasn't used to being so intimate all of a sudden. Besides, she didn't want to give him any hope. Zhang Fucai was a little dejected. At this moment, he received a call. It was from his wife, saying that their child had a fever. Chapter 51-52. After hanging up, he told Sister Hong, "The child has a fever, I have to rush back." Sister Hong nodded. "Hurry up and go. Don't mess around outside anymore. It's not easy for your wife to take care of 2 children." Zhang Fucai threw away the cigarette but in his hand. "I know. I'm leaving. Be careful when you go back." Sister Hong took out a card. "Go. Don't mess around outside anymore. It's not easy for your wife to take care of 2 children." Sister Hong took out a card. "Here, this is for you." There was 300,000 yuan in it. It was a small gift from her. Although he was the chief editor, he had spent a lot of money on Du Meili these days. It was not easy for his wife at home. Chang Zheng let her go and asked her subordinates to give her a check for 5 million yuan. She gave this to Zhang Fucai as a medical fee and a small gift from her. Zhang Fucai was stunned for a moment. Then, he frowned. "What kind of person do you think I am?" Su Mu said coldly, "Take it. Don't be so wishy-washy like a girl. Hurry up and go. Treat your wife well in the future." Zhang Fucai didn't know why, but his nose turned sour. He came over and hugged Sister Hong. He said softly, "Lu Hong, I'm sorry. Be my wife in the next life. I'll definitely treat you well." Lu Hong was silent for a moment. She wanted to cry too. Then, she pushed him away and said with a smile, "You're talking nonsense again. I want to give you a big slap." Zhang Fucai's eyes were filled with tears. "You're like this. You're tough on the outside but soft on the inside. You're a good woman. I'm the one who doesn't have the luck in this life." Sister Hong pushed him. "What are you talking about? Hurry up and go to the hospital." Zhang Fucai grunted. His Adam's apple seemed to be choking. Soon, he took a taxi and left. Sister Hong stood there alone with a slender cigarette in her hand. She puffed out the smoke in the dark. It was very charming and attractive. At least, in Master Chang's eyes, it was quite attractive. Master Chang was dressed in black with 2 subordinates following behind him. He had also been eating nearby, but he didn't expect to see his old rival the moment he came out. He looked at Sister Hong's clothes and her long hair carefully, as if he wanted to see every bit of skin on her. Sister Hong also saw him. She stood there, puffing out a cigarette, and stretched out her hand to hail a taxi. Master Chang gave him a look, and his subordinate asked the car to leave. However, the driver refused. "You guys are not allowing others to ride in the car." Master Chang snapped his fingers, and one of his subordinates immediately threw a stack of 100 yuan bills into the car. There were about 2,000 to 3,000 yuan, and the driver immediately drove away happily. Grandpa Chang smiled. "See? This is the charm of money. There's nothing that money can't solve. If there is, then there's not enough money." Sister Hong was speechless. "Chang Zheng, what are you trying to do?" Master Chang rubbed his chin and looked at her. "I'm curious to know what you're up to." "Why? You've just recovered and you're out seducing men again? That fatty just now is your old lover, right? What's the matter? My ex-husband's injury has healed and he's ready to make up with you again. Can that fatty do it?" When Master Chang said that, his subordinate laughed. "How can he be as healthy as our Master Chang? Follow our Master Chang." Master Chang spat out. "Do I look like the kind of person who would beg others? I'm surrounded by beautiful young ladies. It's already enough for me to play with an old married woman once. Do I have to invite her back to cook for me again?" His subordinate was quite innocent. Looking at Master Chang's face, he seemed to be very interested. His eyes were even glowing. He clearly wanted to die. Chapter 51-53. 1 second to remember. Actually, Master Chang's underlings had discussed this in private. Reporter Lu wasn't very good looking, but he was quite flirtatious. Once he put on makeup and dressed up, he really looked like a woman. As for Su Jian and the other women, they were like little desserts to Master Chang. He was already sick of them. Didn't they say that what a man wanted the most was the hardest to get? Other than Miss Su, Reporter Lu was probably the only one who caught Master Chang's eye. Miss Su was Master Chang's benefactor when he was young. Of course, Master Chang wouldn't do anything to her. However, it was different for the great Reporter Lu. Even if he was polite in the past, after such a stab at each other, there wasn't any face left. However, Master Chang's taste was really heavy. But at the same time, he was thinking about 2 women. Whether he was a scumbag or not wasn't something that they, the underlings, could ask about. They were only responsible for watching the show and encouraging Master Chang. In total, Master Chang had only courted 2 women. One was Miss Su, which was a big deal. The other was Reporter Lu. Although the method was a little special, they could tell that Master Chang liked Reporter Lu. Master Chang's eyes lit up again, Sister Hong didn't have time to waste with Chang Zhang. She had to go back. Just as she was about to walk away, her arm was grabbed. Then, Master Cheng's voice was low. You're using my money to support a gigolo. You want to run now? Your money? Sister Hong sneered. How is it your money? Also, I can spend my own money however I want. It doesn't have anything to do with you, Cheng Zhang. Besides, is Zhang Fucai a gigolo? You know very well whether it is or not. He sneered. Do you think I'm blind? Sister Hong looked at him and found it funny. Cheng Zhang, are you crazy? I'm not related to you. Didn't we agree to go our separate ways? She glared at him. She thought he would be difficult to deal with. She didn't expect him to convince Master Cheng. Master Cheng touched his buzz cut and said, yeah, why do I have to be so serious with you? You can just go and sleep with whoever you want. I don't care. As he said that, he walked away with a snort. Sister Hong cursed, you're really sick. One of Master Cheng's subordinates asked Master Cheng, why don't you just tie that woman up and bring her to the villa? Master Cheng can do whatever he wants. Master Cheng hit him on the head. Am I that kind of person? I have no interest in that old woman. As he muttered to himself, he got into the Mercedes-Benz and left. After smoking 2 more cigarettes, Sister Hong called Zhang Fucai to ask him how the child was. Zhang Fucai's voice was quite low. Fortunately, it's 39 degrees. I came in time. The fever has already subsided a little. Sister Hong said a few more words before hanging up. On the other end, Zhang Fucai hung up the phone. His wife asked softly, was that Sister Hong? Zhang Fucai nodded. Yes, we had dinner together tonight to thank that CEO Yi of Stars Entertainment. After all, it was an honor for a big shot like CEO Yi to have a meal with him. However, his wife came from a small place and did not work after getting married. She was somewhat out of touch with society, so she did not say anything. Therefore, he was a little resentful. At this time, his wife suddenly said, Fucai, I know that you have always had Sister Hong in your heart. If you really want to, why don't I? What are you talking about? Zhang Fucai interrupted her. Even if I want to, she won't. With my fat body now, probably only you will take me seriously. Chapter 51-54. Right. He took out a card and said, this is my bonus. There's 300,000 yuan in it. Save it. Our child will need to spend a lot of money in the future. Thus, the little girl was relieved. The man put the money with her, which meant that his heart was at ease. After a while, she remembered and asked, Fucai, is that CEO Yi you mentioned very powerful? Zhang Fucai looked at her and said, very powerful. He's the only related male of the 2 most powerful families in B City. Don't you think he's powerful? The little wife looked yearning and said, that's really powerful. Asterisk at this time, the powerful CEO Yi was sitting in the back seat of the car with Sumu beside him. She drank a little too much and was a little drunk. Fortunately, she wasn't allergic. He regretted letting her drink. If she had an allergic reaction, it would be too troublesome to go to the hospital, and it would also affect her body. She was already a pile of bones, and thinking about how she drank with Lu Hong in the past, he wanted to shake this woman awake now. She was really too stupid. However, now that she was leaning on him, the faint smell of alcohol mixed with the smell of her body was quite nice. Yi Xiangnan couldn't help smelling it and even moved closer. Sumu didn't wake up. She leaned on his shoulder cluelessly until the car stopped at the entrance of the villa. The driver wanted to get out of the car to open the door for them, but he realized that CEO Yi didn't intend to get out of the car, so he got out and left quietly. In the car, it was warm, which was completely different from the cold outside. Yi Xiangnan turned his head and murmured, it's not that I don't want you to drink. You drank so much. He patted her face, but she didn't react and still leaned on his shoulder. No. You don't expect me to carry you upstairs, do you? Yi Xiangnan frowned and said, Sumu. She opened her eyes. He didn't know if she was sober or drunk, but she stared at him. Yi Xiangnan suddenly had some evil thoughts. He pinched her chin with his slender fingers and said, do I look good? Sumu's gaze became even more fixated, with a hint of eagerness. She nodded and said, yes. Yi Xiangnan moved closer. Do you want to see more? Yes, she said, reaching out to touch his nose, and his face. Do you want such a good-looking man to be your husband? His voice deepened. Sumu grunted. There was even a hint of sweetness in her voice. At least, Yi Xiangnan felt that it was a little sweet. He was completely close to her and asked softly in a tone that could not be refused, who is better looking, me or Shen Wenxuan? Sumu stared at him for a long time before saying, you look good. Call me husband, and I'll let you keep looking. Yi Xiangnan found it particularly interesting to tease her like this. Usually, Sumu was cold and indifferent, as if she had no interest in him. When she was drunk, she would stare at him and not bear to look away. In fact, she had always liked his face, but she just couldn't bear it. She didn't mean what she said. Sumu continued to stare at him. After a while, she said softly, "But I don't have a husband." "Isn't Yi Xiangnan your husband?" He coaxed her. He didn't expect her to be so strong when she was drunk. How did she survive in the past? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Wasn't she afraid of being taken advantage of? Thus, he loosened his grip on her chin. Sumu bit her lips and said that it hurt, but he didn't let go. "You still know pain, huh?" Chapter 51-55. Sumu just stared at him blankly, muttering softly in pain. That dazed look made Yi Xiangnan feel rather amused. He chuckled deeply, teasing her just like that. That dazed look made Yi Xiangnan feel rather amused. He chuckled deeply, teasing her just like that. It was very warm in the car, filled with the faint smell of alcohol and his burning scent. If it were any other day, Sumu would definitely not be able to take it, but right now, her mind was in a complete blur, with only the name Yi Xiangnan left in her mind. Yi Xiangnan? Yi Xiangnan? She did not know how many times she had said his name before he let her go. Afterward, he carried her out of the car and into this luxurious villa. The villa was especially warm, and she fell asleep in his arms. She only woke up when the morning sun shone on her face. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by a sea of black and gray, luxurious decorations and style. She thought of Chang Zheng's description of a gigolo, which seemed to match Yi Xiangnan's description. She smiled, but when she sat up, she could not smile anymore. She was wearing a white shirt. It wasn't the first time she had worn Yi Xiangnan's shirt to sleep, but that was when she was in her pajamas. But she remembered that he had worn this shirt yesterday, and there was a faint masculine scent on it. Sumu's face became hot all of a sudden. It was as if he was burning from the inside out. At this moment, Yi Xiangnan came in. The moment he came in, he saw her like this. He smiled. "What's wrong?" Sumu immediately slid under the blanket, biting her lips and not saying a word. At this moment, she was wearing his shirt, and her long hair was scattered over her shoulders. She looked very soft, and CEO Yi could not help but think too much. Curling his lips, he sat by the bed and reached out to touch her hair. "I didn't have the strength to get your pajamas last night." Sumu bit her lips and glared at him. She looked really funny. Yi Xiangnan asked, "Is there a problem?" She lowered her eyes. "Of course there's no problem." Yi Xiangnan nodded shamelessly. "You're right. You're mine. You're just a piece of clothing." He came close to her and whispered, "Mrs. Yi, what do you think?" Sumu was still biting her lip and couldn't answer him at all. He didn't feel that he was making things difficult for her. Instead, he kissed her and rubbed her hair. "Get up. Breakfast is ready. I'll take you to work later." He said it casually and naturally. Sumu disagreed. "Yi Xiangnan, can you not be so high profile?" He lowered his head. "High profile?" He stared at her again. "I think it's very good. But Sumu, are you trying to seduce someone by hiding your married status? Oh, by the way, Shen Wenchuan is also in the company. Do you have any inappropriate thoughts?" Sumu was furious. "Yi Xiangnan, don't slander me." "Well, prove it to me, Mrs. Yi. Prove that you only have Mr. Yi in your heart and no one else." His voice became hoarse. Sumu just stared at him. Obviously, she was furious. Yi Xiangnan chuckled. "Are you angry, or admit it? Boring." Sumu directly lifted the quilt and got up. She ran to the cloakroom. She didn't want to talk to him anymore. Yi Xiangnan always liked to be like this. She didn't know whether other people would think he was annoying. But it was obvious that he didn't want to let her go. When she was about to close the door of the cloakroom, Yi Xiangnan blocked the door and then pressed her against the door. In fact, he was bullying her. Fortunately, there was heating in the cloakroom. She wouldn't be too cold wearing only a shirt. But she was afraid. She was afraid of Yi Xiangnan like this. Chapter 51-56. Are you afraid? His voice was a little intimate, and he said in her ear, "Apologize, and I'll let you go." "There's nothing to apologize for. Yi Xiangnan, you're just bored." She closed her eyes gently. "It's getting late. I have to go to work." Yi Xiangnan raised his hand to check the time, and then said softly, "There's still half an hour before we leave. Change your clothes quickly, and don't put on makeup. Have breakfast in the car." Her eyes widened. Half an hour later, Sumu got into the car, and Yi Xiangnan gave her a bag. "I made breakfast, Mrs. Yi." Sumu didn't want to eat at all, so she leaned against the back of the chair to rest. He never allowed her to sit in the back when she sat in his car, saying that he wasn't her driver, so Sumu didn't object anymore. She tilted her head and said softly, "Please don't. I have to go to work in the morning." "Isn't it normal for newlyweds to be like this?" He pinched her chin and said, "Eat your breakfast. You're already thin enough. I don't want to feel like I'm holding a bone when I hold you." Sumu really wanted to ignore him, but she still ate her breakfast in the end. If she didn't eat, he would probably torture her in other ways. The car drove for more than half an hour until they arrived at the headquarters of Stars Entertainment. Yi Xiangnan got out of the car, and Sumu had already gotten out from the other side. He stopped her. "Come to my place for lunch at noon. Auntie Chen's cooking is more to my taste. I'll just eat in the staff cafeteria." Sumu didn't want to be privileged. After saying that, she left without asking whether he agreed or not. Yi Xiangnan smiled and let her go. When Sumu arrived at the floor where she worked, she felt that the atmosphere was a bit strange, and she couldn't describe it. She walked to her seat and sat down. Her colleague asked in a low voice, "Is Bossy really your husband?" Sumu said, "Okay." That person exchanged glances with the other people in the office. They were surprised and delighted at the same time. They were surprised because this was the wife of the boss of Starlight, and they were in the same office. They were delighted because they could cozy up to her in the future. If they could flatter her, Sumu knew what they were thinking and softly said, "I just arrived and don't know anything. Please give me some pointers. Especially professional stuff." As soon as she finished speaking, a pair of well-maintained hands gently placed on her shoulders, followed by a gentle voice, "Sumu, don't worry, we will help you familiarize yourself with the environment here. Everything will be connected, and we will also treat you as an ordinary colleague, so you don't have to feel pressured." Sumu looked up and recognized that it was the satellite TV's leading actress, Zhao Ning. Zhao Ning's temperament was very good and she seemed to be cultured. Moreover, she was quite famous and did not put on airs. She was very popular in the station. It was the first time they met, and Sumu had a good impression of her. She smiled and nodded. Zhao Ning obviously had a high status here. Her words were gentle, but they carried weight. Even Director Wang respected her when he saw her. Zhao Ning smiled, "I will be going back for maternity leave soon. Sumu, you have to quickly familiarize yourself with the work after this. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. If you need a voice test, you can also find me. Don't be afraid of trouble." She then said, "Director Wang might arrange a separate office for you, so I suggested to her that you can do it in my office. My maternity leave won't be wasted when I go back." She was very understanding. Sumu did not know how to reject, so she did not say much. Chapter 51-57. Sumu did not know how to reject, so she did not say much. After Zhao Ning left, a colleague beside her whispered, "Sumu, don't trust her completely. Zhao Ning knows how to conduct herself. Even Chief Wang was tamed by her. Her husband is in the middle management of Starlight Entertainment. This woman is very ambitious. You have to be careful. CEO Yi is rich and handsome." There was no need to say the rest. Everyone understood what she meant. Some women would get close to you with the goal of getting your husband. Zhao Ning was pregnant, so of course she could not do anything. The child would come back after birth. What if she was close enough to attack CEO Yi? That was really hard to say. Sumu was a little surprised. From her point of view, a woman like Zhao Ning had a perfect life. Did she still need to do this? Besides, Yi Xiangnan's temper was terrible. What were these women thinking? She nodded, "Thank you for reminding me." The colleague whispered, "Her husband is a mistress now. She spoils the mistress." Sumu, afterwards, she politely declined Zhao Ning's suggestion of sharing the same office. She did not want Chief Wang to arrange something else for her. She said it was good to sit outside. Sumu had her own plans. If she was outside, Zhao Ning would have some private matters to discuss with her. The colleague beside her laughed, "Sumu, when you become a broadcaster, you will have a private office. Besides, this Starlight Entertainment building belongs to your family. It seems like Zhao Ning is the owner." "My family?" Sumu laughed, "It belongs to CEO Yi. If you round it up, then it belongs to your family." The colleague was quite loving. First of all, it was because of her identity. More importantly, it was because Sumu was very approachable. Moreover, there was Master Cheng's story. She also dressed appropriately and was not too ostentatious. Zhao Ning, on the other hand, was Chanel all day. She was not a real rich lady, so she had to dress up like a rich lady. That was why Zhao Ning looked like she had a good relationship with everyone, but in reality, the lower-level employees did not like her. Now, it seemed like she wanted to have a third Sumu. She had another in her stomach, so her ambition was not small. Sumu didn't believe it or not. After meeting Du Meili, she felt that there were always such women in the office. However, she wouldn't show it on her face if it didn't happen. After all, she was just a small employee. This building had nothing to do with her. She had signed a prenuptial agreement, but there was no need to tell others about it. After a busy morning, she was just about to go for lunch when Zhao Ning came out. Her slender and beautiful hand was placed on Su Mu's shoulder. "How is it? Do you want to eat together or do you have an appointment with CEO Yi? I'll eat it myself." Su Mu smiled. Zhao Ning smiled and casually said, "Aren't you going to eat with CEO Yi? CEO Yi and you are newlyweds, and your relationship seems to be very good." At this time, Su Mu's smile was already businesslike. "I like to keep a clear distinction between public and private affairs." Zhao Ning smiled. "That's true. Let's go together. I'll introduce you to Starlight's staff cafeteria. It's not bad." Su Mu couldn't refuse, so she packed her things and went with them. The remaining people purposely walked slowly and whispered, "The strongest mistress is probably going to make a move again. Don't you think Su Mu is too stupid? If it was me, I would just ignore her. Her intentions are too obvious." Another person smiled. "Who said it wasn't? Her methods are brilliant. She made Su Mu happy. If CEO Yi gets hooked, I think she might even give up the child in her stomach." Chapter 51-58. Another colleague mocked, "Isn't that right? She has the face of an angel but the heart of a devil. I hope Su Mu is not that stupid." "I don't think she is stupid. Think about it, to be Mrs. Yi, she must be a tough character. Plus, CEO Yi looks like he is infatuated with her. Why don't we hurry to the canteen? Maybe there will be a good show to watch. This time, I am on Su Mu's side. Of course I am on Su Mu's side. She is the real Mrs. Yi. Zhao Ning is just a broadcaster. To put it nicely, she is a celebrity. To put it bluntly, she is just an actress." Another person laughed coldly. Everyone in the office went to the staff canteen. When they arrived, they saw Zhao Ning and Su Mu sitting there together. They had already started eating. Just as they were about to go over, the canteen suddenly became quiet. At the entrance of the canteen, Yi Xiangnan came over with Secretary Li. "God. It's CEO Yi." Yi Xiangnan walked in elegantly. Su Mu pretended not to see him. Zhao Ning coughed, "That is CEO Yi. Su Mu, aren't you going to ask him to come over to eat?" Su Mu almost could not eat anymore. This guy was so flirtatious. She said she would not go to his office, and he came here to catch her. She lowered her head and said softly, "No need, we can eat by ourselves." Zhao Ning still wanted to say something, but she saw Yi Xiangnan and Secretary Li walking over. She immediately put on a professional smile, but Secretary Li picked a table for Yi Xiangnan. Yi Xiangnan sat down. Zhao Ning was a little disappointed, but she still smiled politely. Yi Xiangnan acted like he did not see it. He did not even know who the small broadcaster under him was. Moreover, if they were talking about looks and temperament, he had a lot of good-looking women around him. Instead of talking about looks and temperament, it was better to be flirtatious. Zhao Ning was a little embarrassed. At this time, Secretary Li came over and smiled, "Mu, CEO Yi is waiting for you. If you don't go over, he will be angry." She was full of hints, and Su Mu couldn't pretend to be confused. She raised her chin and said, "I'm eating with my colleagues." She could see through Zhao Ning's thoughts. She wasn't happy. Although she didn't want to monopolize Yi Xiangnan, she didn't want to be used by others. Zhao Ning suggested, "This is a bit inconvenient. Su Mu, why don't we eat with CEO Yi? That way, it will be easier for you to talk." Secretary Li was a little surprised. "Isn't the woman in front of me that female anchor? I heard that she's pregnant, but right now, she's acting like a slut. Does she think that she can copy Lin Lu?" At that time, Lin Lu was a woman that only appeared when CEO Yi was angry and especially unrestrained. Now, CEO Yi was like a good man who went to work punctually every day. Who could see CEO Yi going out to fool around? Besides, Anchor Zhao was pregnant with the flesh and blood of the middle management of Starlight Entertainment. Even if she didn't think for herself, she had to think for her husband's future. Seducing someone else's husband in front of his wife, was her brain damaged? Secretary Li understood. She looked at Su Mu, but Su Mu didn't have any expression. Secretary Li had interacted with her a lot, so she understood. Su Mu understood. Su Mu calmly said, "That's fine, let's eat together." She looked at Yi Xiangnan, and CEO Yi seemed to be looking at her casually. Then, he waved his hand to let her go over. Zhao Ning was extremely excited. "Su Mu, let's go over." Su Mu calmly smiled, "All right." The colleagues were all stunned. One of them mumbled, "She's here, she's here. She brought the baby in her stomach to seduce CEO Yi." Chapter 51-59. Yi Xiangnan was sitting there. When he saw Sumu come over, he gestured for her to sit beside him. With so many people watching, Sumu couldn't not give him some face. After sitting down, Zhao Ning smiled appropriately. CEO Yi, can I sit here? Yi Xiangnan frowned. If you don't want to sit, what are you doing here? Zhao Ning was a little embarrassed, but she still had a smile on her face. She elegantly sat down, but after sitting down, she was stunned. Secretary Li came from the door with 2 wooden lunchboxes. CEO Yi, Sumu, you guys eat. I'll clean up. Sumu quickly said, you go eat. I'll clean up after you finish. They were very familiar with each other. The people around them could feel it too. This meant that Sumu was very well received by CEO Yi. Otherwise, how could Secretary Li be so familiar with her and act so naturally? Yi Xiangnan said, you go eat. Sumu feels bad for you. These words were a little sour. Secretary Li wanted to laugh after hearing it. She coughed, all right, I'll go eat. I'll have to trouble you with Sumu. Sumu watched her leave. Zhao Ning was a little envious. For her, having a secretary like Secretary Li who could be close to CEO Yi was very convenient. The other thing was that she was surprised that CEO Yi had already prepared lunch for Sumu. She thought that their relationship wasn't that good, but it seemed like she was wrong. Also, the food was very fragrant. Once it was opened, it was filled with the fragrance of rice. The chicken soup was also fragrant. It must have been made by the servants in the house. Zhao Ning wanted to live like this. She also hired a part-time worker, but there were so many servants that she couldn't afford it. She was pregnant and needed nourishment. She couldn't help but want to drink it. Thus, she said softly, it smells very good. She didn't expect CEO Yi to follow up. Sumu has always been very thin. She'll become even thinner if she eats at a restaurant. As he spoke, he reached out and pinched Sumu's face. Really, if it was a normal woman being treated like this by CEO Yi, her mood would probably skyrocket. Sumu, on the other hand, only felt like he was fucking a dog. He was doing it on purpose for others to see, and she was now his employee, not his pet. The way he was treating her made Sumu very unhappy, so when she was unhappy, she slapped his hand away and said very honestly, don't touch me. Yi Xiangnan was not surprised at all. Sumu was not a girl who was easy to talk to. She would not give him face just because of his identity. The more she acted like this, the more interesting it was. They thought it was normal, but the others were stunned. CEO Yi pampers Sumu so much. Sumu is so willful. Who has ever seen CEO Yi pampering someone like this? No one at all. After Sumu finished patting him, she continued to drink her soup. Yi Xiangnan pinched her face again and said, Sumu, you really have no conscience. Sumu wanted to slap his hand away again, but he caught her hand before she could. All right, let's eat. Don't mess with me. Sumu glared at him. Yi Xiangnan smiled, and it was a very nice smile. Sumu couldn't say a word. She just stared at him. Go home and look at me slowly. There are so many people here. Are you sure you want to keep staring at me like this? Yi Xiangnan smiled and then said to Zhao Ning casually, you are Sumu's colleague, right? Sorry about that. Please take care of our Mumu in the future. Chapter 51-60. After Yi Xiangnan finished speaking, the colleagues all laughed. Zhao Ning's trick doesn't work on CEO Yi. That's right, from the beginning to the end, CEO Yi didn't even look at her. Another person said. Zhao Ning was very calm, I will definitely do it. Oh yeah, CEO Yi, my name is Zhao Ning. I am the female host of a certain program. Sumu is learning from me. This was almost a cliché. Yi Xiangnan looked up with interest. Then, under Zhao Ning's expectant gaze, he said, the pregnant female host that Secretary Li mentioned? Zhao Ning's face couldn't hold it in anymore. After a while, she forced a smile, yes, CEO Yi. Yi Xiangnan nodded, that's good. Wait until Sumu gets used to it, then you can focus on taking care of the fetus. After he finished speaking, he started eating. He even rubbed Sumu's head. There was nothing else for Zhao Ning to do. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even ask Zhao Ning to drink any soup. It was sad. After they finished eating, Zhao Ning took the initiative to clean up. Sumu said there was no need. Zhao Ning's beautiful hands reached out, let me do it. I will wash it and send it to CEO Ye's office. Sumu still said there was no need. Yi Xiangnan smiled, I want lunch with Sumu. You can just give it to Secretary Li. After he finished speaking, he dragged Sumu away. Zhao Ning's face was twitching. She put down the lunchbox and called a waiter, wash CEO Ye's lunchbox. Seriously, it was full of oil. She could only give it to Secretary Li, but Zhao Ning thought that she could get close to Secretary Li. Maybe she could get some reliable information. She was the same as the others. She didn't believe that the average-looking Sumu could gain CEO Ye's favor. In terms of looks, temperament, and talent, she was miles ahead of Sumu. Zhao Ning was a woman who spent her time in the Vanity Fair. She didn't have a strong sense of family, so she just wanted to climb up. Therefore, at this time, she did not hesitate at all. If she could get close to Yi Xiangnan, she could give up this child. He had to admit that women were truly terrifying. Yi Xiangnan had seen a lot of such women. When he arrived at the office, he directly told Secretary Li not to let anyone disturb him. Only then did he bring Sumu in. Sumu looked at him and said, "It's not good to let a colleague wash the dishes for you, right? Colleague?" He smiled. "Sumu, do you not have any feelings for her, or do you really not have any feelings for me? She's stealing your husband right under your nose, and you don't have any feelings at all?" Sumu pushed his body away and sat on the sofa to play with her phone. "But you can't make it so embarrassing. Stay away from her. Don't let her get close to me, or fire her. You choose one." He seemed to have thought of something. "It seems that her husband is still in the middle management of the company. Sumu, do you think if I fire her husband, it will wake her up? You really are a bastard. Just ignore her. Why do you have to do this?" Sumu didn't even raise her head. "Boring. I'm serious." He walked in front of her and looked down at her. He said seriously, "Sumu, I'm very unhappy. Do you think I want any woman? I also don't like being harassed by women. When your colleague starts to harass me, you are an accomplice." Sumu was speechless. His tone sounded a bit wronged, therefore, she asked softly, "Then it's still my fault?" "Of course it's your fault, Mrs. Yi." His voice became deeper. "So I want to make it up to you." Chapter 5161. Memorize. Sumu looked at him with an obviously shocked expression. Was Yi Xiangnan acting coquettishly? She was a little shocked, and her voice was very soft. "Are you kidding me, Yi Xiangnan? Don't you like to mess around with your subordinates?" I was single at that time. Yi Xiangnan's desire to survive was strong. Sumu pursed her lips and didn't want to talk to him. No matter what, he was right. Yi Xiangnan obviously didn't want to let her go. He reached out and touched her face. "Are you angry?" "Of course not. I won't be angry with you." Then, she recalled something. "I'm going to take a nap. You, sleep on the sofa. Don't come in." It was also the first time that Sumu spoke to him so fiercely. However, after she finished speaking, Yi Xiangnan looked at her with a clear gaze, which made Sumu feel a little scared. She always felt that he had some other meaning. When she thought about it carefully, she didn't dare to think about it anymore. He got up and said, "I'm going to take a nap." Yi Xiangnan's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to pull her back, but Sumu ran so fast that she really ran away. The door to the lounge was closed, and then there was the sound of a lock. She really did lock the door and not let him in. Yi Xiangnan smiled silently. He was not in a hurry. Moreover, as the CEO of Starlight Entertainment and the successor of the Yi family, he rarely had the habit of taking afternoon naps. With so many things to do, he still sat on the sofa and read the newspaper. The sun shone through the window and shone on him, making him look like a god. He quietly read the magazine, thought about the people in the lounge, and smiled. This was not bad. He had a wife that he was interested in, a son, and a happy life. Wasn't that what a successful man was? He wasn't that obsessed with beautiful women. He could get them with just a wave of his hand. He had hugged them before, but they weren't anything special. Sumu had an ordinary face, but her figure was very good. It was so good that only CEO Yi knew about it. He found it interesting. At least, he was quite satisfied with Sumu's appearance. Outside the door, Zhao Ning took the dishes that Fu Xing had washed and knocked on the door. Inside, Yi Xiangnan thought it was Secretary Li, so he said, "Come in." Zhao Ning opened the door and smiled. "CEO Yi, the lunchbox is ready." At a glance, she saw a luxurious office, covered with expensive carpets, everywhere decorated with taste, and that man sitting on a famous sofa, looking very noble and good-looking. CEO Yi looked like a typical rich man's son. He was young and good-looking. His aura was 10 streets ahead of the other young men in the entertainment circle. Zhao Ning's heart started to beat faster. She longed for this man, longed especially. Although her husband was in the middle management of Starlight and had an annual income of 10 million, she was also a famous anchor, but compared to a CEO with 100 billion, she was really poor. Moreover, her husband was over 40 years old. In terms of appearance, he couldn't be compared to CEO Yi. Zhao Ning felt that she had met her true love. She didn't love CEO Yi because of his power, but because of him. He had everything that she longed for. She stared at him for a long time, then she lowered her voice, CEO Yi, can I come in? Yi Xiangnan flipped the magazine in boredom, put it on the coffee table. Walk softly, Sumu is sleeping. Zhao Ning's mouth twitched. There was a carpet here, and Sumu should be in the resting room, right? However, she didn't dare to refute CEO Ye's words, nor was she willing to refute him. She walked in carefully and put the things on the coffee table. She had overstepped her boundaries, so she should leave. Yi Xiangnan was already happy that he didn't blame her, but Zhao Ning was still not satisfied. She felt that the fact that he let her in was a tacit agreement. Chapter 5162. She felt that the superior letting her in was a tacit agreement. Maybe CEO Yi liked to eat secretly. Moreover, Madame was sleeping. Wouldn't that be even more? She gathered her courage and leaned on the sofa. CEO Yi, before she could finish, the door to the lounge opened. Sumu walked out. Yi Xiangnan, the class teacher of Cymbidium Chinense is calling. She then stared at Zhao Ning. She wasn't shocked, but she was surprised. Wasn't Zhao Ning pregnant? Or did she think that she could hide it from me and Yi Xiangnan while sitting on the sofa? Yi Xiangnan wasn't such an unscrupulous person, was he? Even a pregnant woman? However, after the surprise, Sumu waved her phone and said, he said that Cymbidium Chinense has a low fever. He went to the school doctor and is resting there. He asked if we should pick him up now or let him take a nap there. Yi Xiangnan looked at his watch. Let's do it this way. I'll let the second secretary watch over him. If anything happens, we'll go pick him up together. I'll call my mom and tell her. Sumu felt that it was a good arrangement. She nodded and continued to discuss. The husband and wife continued to talk about their family matters, as if Zhao Ning did not exist. Zhao Ning felt uncomfortable. She stood up and put on her high heels. Sumu, don't misunderstand. I didn't misunderstand. Sumu smiled faintly. This is between you and CEO Yi. After that, she returned to the lounge and closed the door. The sound of the door being slammed was a little loud. She was obviously unhappy. Zhao Ning felt a little uneasy. However, she saw that Yi Xiangnan didn't chase her away. Instead, he called Wen Yuan and talked about Cymbidium Chinense. She felt that CEO Yi had been playing outside. Sumu couldn't care less and was too lazy to care. Although the atmosphere and situation were a bit off, Zhao Ning had finally found this opportunity, so she shamelessly stayed. When Yi Xiangnan hung up, he saw that Zhao Ning was still there. He frowned and said, "Why are you still here, Anchor Zhao? Can't you see that my wife is unhappy?" Zhao Ning's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what CEO Yi meant, so she said in a small voice, "CEO Yi, I don't have that much ambition. Really, I don't care about the title." Yi Xiangnan sat there in a dignified manner. He tilted his head to look at the woman and smiled. "Status? You are thinking too much, Miss Xiao. When did I say I was interested in you? Besides, I am a married man, and I am your superior's superior. If I am not wrong, you seem to be very friendly to Sumu, the new colleague. Is your goal to seduce her husband?" He was merciless. This woman was too annoying. He was merciless. This woman was too annoying. Wasn't she pregnant? Why didn't she have any sense of propriety? She didn't care about the seed in her belly, but he cared about his son. As a parent, Yi Sun was sick, so it was only natural that the parents would be troubled. Yet, this woman was still trying to seduce her husband. Even if she wanted to behave properly, this wasn't the way to do it. Yi Xiangnan immediately made a decision. You resign, or your husband resign. You choose one. Zhao Ning was stunned. She lost her voice and said, "Sumu wanted me to take care of her. Do you think such a big company like Stars Entertainment only needs you?" Yi Xiangnan stood up and pressed the internal line. "Secretary Li, come over." Chapter 5163. Secretary Li was confused. Wasn't it supposed to be just the two of them? Why did she come? As soon as he came in, he understood what was going on. Zhao Ning was an idiot. Or was she so confident in her own charm that she was bursting with confidence? Sumu was still inside and she was openly seducing CEO Yi. Secretary Li sympathized with her husband for a minute. Sympathizing was sympathizing, but some things still needed to be said. Yi Xiangnan put down the things in his hands and said calmly, "Tell Director Wang that Zhao Ning is not needed. Let her go to where she came from. Find another professional anchor to take Sumu. Tell them it was my idea." Secretary Li felt good hearing this and nodded, "Yes, CEO Yi." Zhao Ning wanted to say something but was pulled out by Secretary Li. Once the door was closed, Secretary Li went straight to the point, "Anchor Zhao, your husband is still in Starlight, right? If you are smart, you should keep this matter to yourself for your husband's future or reputation. Her tone was a bit heavy. Zhao Ning was a bit unsatisfied. I didn't do anything, Secretary Li. I just sent a lunchbox. Actually, this matter shouldn't be our secretary's concern. But Anchor Zhao, you underestimated CEO Ye's importance to Mrs. Yi. If he didn't like her, would he keep her by his side? If CEO Yi really wanted to play, wouldn't this be very inconvenient? Keeping her by his side means he doesn't want to develop his relationship with others. At the same time, he can monitor his wife. In this couple, the one who cares more about each other is CEO Yi. Why can't you see it? Sumu didn't care at all. This marriage was arranged by CEO Yi. CEO Yi insisted on getting married and used all kinds of methods. CEO Yi is in high spirits, so is it appropriate for you to do this? In the end, you didn't do a good job. If you make Mrs. Yi unhappy, then CEO Yi will be unhappy. After Secretary Li's analysis, Zhao Ning didn't understand. Then, CEO Yi didn't reject it in the beginning. Did CEO Yi accept it? Secretary Li asked. Zhao Ning didn't say anything. Secretary Li said, CEO Yi just wanted to see Mrs. Yi get jealous. It's just a little trick between husband and wife. Miss Zhao, you're taking it too seriously. CEO Yi has seen a lot of beautiful women. What you're doing is too much. She's pregnant. Zhao Ning did not want to leave the station. She felt that she was the pillar of the station. She had enjoyed the limelight here. If she left and got pregnant, when she returned, there would be no ripples. Secretary Li advised, go and beg Sumu. Listen to what she has to say at the nightclub, but if you go too far, I don't think she will agree easily. Zhao Ning thanked Secretary Li and returned to the station. Director Wang had already received the news. Naturally, he pulled her into his office and scolded her. Are you out of your mind? Zhao Ning, you're such a dignified person. CEO Yi is Sumu's husband. How can you work in the same department in the future? Also, how many rich men divorce because of a woman? That Lin Lu from the headquarters is highly educated. She can drink and dance. She's very open and flirtatious. Didn't CEO Yi warm his bed a few times? He even gave her a chance. I heard that it was because Sumu was unhappy with CEO Yi. Now, Lin Lu is finished. Who in Starlight doesn't know that as long as CEO Yi has an affair, Mrs. Yi will divorce and sell shoes? Didn't you hear about her battle record? She didn't go to class these past 2 days. Her pursuers spent tens of billions to please her. Look, the opposite building, as long as Sumu nods, it will be hers. Do you? Think about other people's strengths. Don't think that you're prettier than her or flirtatious. Who knows, maybe she's even more flirtatious than you in private. All men like her. Chapter 5164. Zhao Ning was covered in blood from Chief Wang's lecture. She still could not digest it after a long time. She still wanted to say something, but Chief Wang did not want to talk to her anymore. He said calmly, that's it. I have said everything I need to say. Little Zhao, think about it. If you and your wife are fired, wouldn't it affect your life a lot? Think about it. I'll just say one sentence to you. You have no chance with CEO Yi. Zhao Ning still left and packed her things in a daze. When she left, her colleagues looked at her. They were shocked at how quickly she lost. What did she do to make Sumu do this to her? After Zhao Ning left, Chief Wang walked out with an ugly expression. All of you, be more careful. You all saw what happened to Zhao Ning. Sumu is CEO Ye's wife. We should use this advantage and try to get funding to do a few good programs. Zhao Ning's hands are too long. She wants to seduce her husband, but why would he be willing? Chief Wang laughed coldly. Now that everyone has seen it, be more alert. Director Wang laughed coldly. Now that everyone has seen it, be more alert. Don't think that just because you look good, that's what happened to Zhao Ning. Also, don't spread rumors about this, it won't be good for Sumu's reputation. She came to us, so we need to love her, care for her, and let her feel the warmth of a big family. Don't let her think that you're a hypocrite and that you're trying to seduce CEO Yi. If that's the case, Sumu won't be happy, and CEO Yi won't have a good impression of us. Do you guys still want your year-end bonus? Do you all still want a good life? The people below all responded, Zhao Ning is too naive. She thinks she can seduce him. She doesn't know what kind of person CEO Yi is. Is he really someone she can reach? Everyone chimed in. Chief Wang was very satisfied. He ordered a few people, come and clean up Zhao Ning's things. There will be a new anchor in a while. This is someone sent by the higher-ups. Treat her well. Sumu will be with you all for now. She will be more at ease this way. After arranging everything, Chief Wang returned to his office. On the other side, Yi Xiangnan sat alone for a while before going to the lounge. Sumu was probably worried about the Cymbidium chinense, so she leaned against the bed with her phone in her hand. Yi Xiangnan sat next to her and reached out to touch her head. Are you jealous and unhappy, or are you worried about your son? Sumu glanced at him. What do you think? Both, right? Don't tell me you aren't unhappy. If you weren't, you wouldn't have gone back to the lounge alone. You would have gone back to the station with Xiao Ning. His expression was gentle, and he rarely spoke to her like this. There was even a hint of tenderness in his eyes. Sumu lowered her eyes and said faintly, "It's not like that. I just don't think I need to take responsibility for her actions. I won't say anything if you don't punish her, but I'll feel uncomfortable when I see her in the station in the future." Yi Xiangnan smiled. Why not? When you see her, you'll think of her seducing your husband? Sumu looked at him. Yi Xiangnan, can you not be so narcissistic? He chuckled and suddenly pulled her closer. Sumu, don't tell me that you don't have any feelings for me. If you say that you do, I won't believe you at all. If you don't have any feelings, you won't. Sumu's face turned red. Yi Xiangnan, can you? She struggled, but she couldn't break free. Looking up, his eyes were abnormally bright. Today is the 4th update. Chapter 5165. Sumu was speechless. She remembered, I'm going to work. But he grabbed her hand, don't go this afternoon. Let Director Wang handle it. With you here, Director Wang won't dare to say anything. Sumu was stunned. What did you do? They talked for a long time. She seemed to have forgotten to ask about Zhao Ning's fate. She only remembered now. Yi Xiangnan played with his phone in his hand and smiled. Leave the station and leave Starlight Entertainment. What else do you think? Sumu looked at him. You can transfer her to another department. Yi Xiangnan did not answer her question directly. Instead, he smiled. Mrs. Yi, are you admitting that you are not feeling well? Sumu could not answer him. She did not want to talk to him at all. He was too hateful. Yi Xiangnan touched her hair. Okay, are you still angry? I didn't care about her. Regarding this matter, Sumu could not blame him. Yi Xiangnan did not give Zhao Ning any hints, but Zhao Ning insisted on getting involved. She was quite speechless. I will go to the station. There is no need to hide here for such a small matter. What will my colleagues think of me? She looked at him and gently pushed him to the side. It's almost time. Hey! Yi Xiangnan quickly grabbed her wrist with a hint of amusement. You're really stubborn. Sumu looked at him. Yi Xiangnan surrendered. Okay, go. Do you need me to accompany you? Sumu looked at him with a strange look. I am not your son. This is a small matter. Besides, it is not my fault. The person who seduced her is her, and the person who fired her is you. It has nothing to do with me. She was about to leave. Yi Xiangnan followed her out and opened the door for her. You really have a heart of stone. Then he said seriously, I know you are worried about Cymbidium chinense. Why don't you wait for me in the lobby at 4:00? We will get off work early to pick up Cymbidium chinense. Don't worry, the second secretary is there. Sumu nodded. When she went to the station, the atmosphere was a bit different. After she sat down, her colleague whispered, Zhao Ning packed her stuff. Although Director Wang did not allow it, how could a woman not gossip? After that, he looked at Sumu, hoping to get some reliable insider information. Sumu smiled faintly. Maybe he wants to go home and take care of the fetus. She didn't say anything, but her attitude was a little cold. Everyone present was smart, so how could they not see it? Everyone stopped talking and quietly did their own things. It wasn't that they were trying to push Sumu away. Sumu was CEO Ye's wife, who would dare push her away? It was just that they were shocked. Zhao Ning was a pillar of the station, yet CEO Yi could change her just like that. It could be seen how important Sumu was in CEO Ye's heart. Sumu was doing her own things. It could be said that she was learning. Suddenly, she remembered something. When she was at the Sun News Agency, she got along well with Little One. Now that her relationship with Yi Xiangnan was like this, she wanted Little One to come over. Of course, she could inform Director Wang, but she didn't want to use her own identity to do things here. She was going to inform Yi Xiangnan. At 4:00, Sumu asked for leave from the supervisor. She said that she was going to pick up her child early. The supervisor had already heard from the director about today's situation. The atmosphere in the station was very tense. Now that Sumu had asked for leave, it must be because she was with CEO Yi. The supervisor was very kind and even cared about her child. It seemed like the child was not CEO Ye's, but a normal subordinate's. Chapter 5166. It had to be said that the supervisor was much more troublesome than Zhao Ning. It was not a good thing for a woman to be too beautiful. Sometimes, she would be overconfident. Sumu thanked her and packed her things. She carried her bag and left work. When she left, a colleague whispered, "Actually, Sumu is quite low-key. Which rich woman would be willing to work for herself? Moreover, they would start from the bottom. Some people don't care if they can do well or not. They just want to be an official." The colleague laughed, "That's right. Sumu is quite easy to get along with. It's not wrong to listen to the director. If we have a good relationship, we can do a few good programs or projects here. The future will naturally be bright. CEO Yi will definitely give good resources to his wife." Of course, Sumu did not know what was going on in the office. She went to the lobby to wait for Yi Xiangnan. However, Yi Xiangnan had a short meeting. He used his phone to send her a WeChat message, asking her to wait for a while. She replied. When she put away her phone, she was a little confused. She did not know if her relationship with Yi Xiangnan was good. She only knew that they interacted a lot. It seemed like they were a couple now. He felt like they were newlyweds. She felt like they were an old couple. She really could not accept the fact that she and Yi Xiangnan were in love. She did not want to think about it. She contacted Yi Xiangnan's second secretary. The second secretary assured her that the fever of Cymbidium chinense had gone down. She was very energetic now. It would be fine to wait a little longer. Sumu felt a little guilty. She had not seen Cymbidium chinense for a few days. Although Yi Xiangnan did not let her see it, she had to admit that she was afraid of him. She was indeed forced to do things that she did not want to do. However, she would be lying to herself if she said that she was not addicted to it. Sumu bit her lips. She did not dare to think about anything else. Just as she was thinking about it, a familiar figure stood in front of her, Sumu. Sumu looked up. Shen Wenxuan? He was holding a briefcase in his hand and seemed to have returned from work. When he saw Sumu sitting there, he called out to her. Their relationship now was quite delicate. They were exes, and they were about to become family. Sumu also felt very uncomfortable. She tucked her hair behind her ear to ease the discomfort and said softly, "How's Yihui recently?" "Pretty good. The wedding is just around the corner, and she's been talking about you. It's just that her older brother won't let her go, so Yihui can't see you," Shen Wenxuan said with a smile. Sumu felt sad, not for herself, but for Yihui. Actually, Yihui was a very, very beautiful girl. She was innocent and well-raised, but she didn't have any bad habits. She was the kind of girl that everyone loved. Sumu whispered, "I'll visit her when I'm free. I'm waiting for CEO Yi. I'll pick up Cymbidium chinense later." Shen Wenxuan smiled and said, "Actually, you don't have to keep emphasizing CEO Yi. I heard that you're going to have a wedding after our wedding. Sumu, congratulations." He reached out his hand. Sumu was actually a little hesitant. After all, there were so many people watching. Shen Wenxuan smiled faintly and said, "It's because there are so many people watching that we have to be more open, right? We can't live with the rumors of others, don't you think so?" Sumu also smiled. She reached out to him and shook his hand gently. With this grip, everything that had happened in the past was considered to be over. Chapter 5167. 1 Second to Remember. Unfortunately, this scene was seen by CEO Yi, who came out of the elevator. The receptionist's description was that his face suddenly darkened, as if a jar of vinegar had been poured on his face. But the next second, he smiled like a spring breeze. CEO Yi's smile was fake. He was obviously jealous. But this was what you thought. CEO Yi didn't think so. He even thought that he was very magnanimous. CEO Yi walked over gracefully and naturally put his arm around his wife's waist. Lawyer Shen. Shen Wenxuan happened to be facing this direction. He knew that Yi Xiangnan came with jealousy. Don't ask how he knew. If you asked, it was a man's intuition. The two men shook hands. The meaning in their eyes was unclear. Sumu didn't know. Her idea was very simple. Shen Wenxuan and Yihui had a child and were going to get married. Naturally, she wouldn't miss the past anymore. Otherwise, it would be very strange. Besides, she and Yi Xiangnan were together. Aren't we going to pick up Cymbidium chinense? She pulled Yi Xiangnan's sleeve. Then, under the gaze of many people, CEO Yi directly held his wife's hand. Let's go now. He talked with Shen Wenxuan about a few business matters. There was no other communication, so he left directly. In the car, Sumu finally came to her senses. She said while fastening her seatbelt, "You don't have to be so serious every time you see Shen Wenxuan. I don't care. You have to think about Yi Hui's face." Yi Xiangnan started the car and smiled. "You're acting like Mrs. Yi now. You've learned to teach people a lesson, haven't you?" Sumu stared at him and didn't speak for a long time. Yi Xiangnan smiled again. "Aren't you happy to see your first love?" "I'm very happy. I'll be even happier if you don't show up. Sumu retorted. She had thought that he would get angry, but Yi Xiangnan didn't speak for a long time. Sumu couldn't help but turn her head to look at him. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth, and he seemed to be very happy. Sumu wondered if he was reading early. His mood was too unstable. Yi Xiangnan drove to the red light in front of them. He grabbed her hand and smiled. You're getting more and more impudent now. Weren't you afraid of me before? Now you're fighting with me? Sumu wanted to retract her hand, but he didn't let her. He continued to play with it slowly, and before the light turned green, he even turned his head to smile at her. Sumu was so angry that she ignored him until the car arrived at the nursery. She parked the car and got off together. Cymbidium Chinense was still in the infirmary. He had already woken up. The secretary helped him put on his clothes and played games with him. When the door was opened, Cymbidium Chinense's eyes lit up when he saw Sumu. He rushed to her at once. Mom. Sumu also felt strange in her heart. Holding the little guy in her arms, she thought that it seemed that she hadn't seen Cymbidium Chinense for a long time and hadn't hugged this warm little body for a long time. Yi Xiangnan leaned on the side. You forget Dad after seeing Mom? Cymbidium Chinense was in his mother's arms, and his little face was a little red. Yi Xiangnan touched his little head and didn't argue with him. The secretary smiled. Then CEO Yi. Mrs. Yi, I'll go back first. Sumu was a little embarrassed to be called Mrs. Yi, but she didn't refute. She said softly, I'll take you home on the way. It's not very convenient to take a taxi here. The secretary didn't dare to let CEO Yi take her home, so she hurriedly refused. However, Yi Xiangnan was quite obedient. Well, I'll take you home on the way. Chapter 5168. The second secretary's mouth twitched. This favor came so fast that she had no time to digest it. In fact, Yi Xiangnan's idea was quite simple. This favor was given by Sumu. In the future, Sumu's words would naturally carry weight in front of the group of people below. He was very familiar with the way of the workplace. Sumu was much simpler than him. The second secretary had helped to take care of Cymbidium Chinense for a long time, so it was natural for her to send it back. So the four of them got in the car. Sumu naturally sat in the back seat because she wanted to hold Cymbidium Chinense. The second secretary dared not sit in the back seat because she would regard CEO Yi as the driver. So she thought it was more suitable to sit in the front seat. But Yi Xiangnan said lightly, Secretary Wang, you sit in the back seat and help Sumu take care of Cymbidium Chinense. Although the second secretary was not as good as Secretary Li, she was also a smart person. She immediately understood CEO Yi's meaning. CEO Yi did not want her to sit in the front seat. This seat was reserved for Mrs. Yi. Many men actually did not like other women sitting here. Sumu held Cymbidium Chinense and talked to Cymbidium Chinense. Secretary Wang also played with the little guy. If only CEO Yi was there, she would not dare, but Sumu was very approachable, so she was a lot more relaxed. Cymbidium Chinense was very polite. It called her Aunt Wang and told her parents in a childish voice that Aunt Wang bought candy for it. The candy was very delicious. Secretary Wang laughed, what a sweet little mouth. Yi Xiangnan drove for an hour to send Secretary Wang home. When she got off the car, Secretary Wang felt a little unreal. She was just a second secretary and rarely interacted with CEO Yi. In her impression, CEO Yi was a very cold man. Few women in the company could enjoy CEO Yi's gentleness. Even the previous Lin Lu, CEO Yi was not polite to her. A man's attitude towards a woman who threw herself into his arms would not be good. But in the car just now, she felt that CEO Yi was actually quite gentle towards Sumu. At red lights, he would look at the rearview mirror. If he wasn't looking at the Cymbidium Chinense, he was looking at Sumu with a passionate gaze. Secretary Wang thought to himself that they were newlyweds after all. Ah, they were indeed different. Later, Sumu said that Cymbidium Chinense was a little cold. She said it softly. After CEO Yi raised the temperature, he asked gently if it was okay. His voice was hoarse and pleasant to hear. Moreover, Sumu could make CEO Yi drive for an hour to send her back with just one word. How big of a face did she have? How much did CEO Yi care about her? The next day, Secretary Wang told this important discovery to her immediate superior, Secretary Li. Secretary Li also deliberately publicized it so that the whole company knew about it. Even Sumu's colleagues in the station knew about it. All of a sudden, everyone knew that CEO Yi loved Madam, but Madam didn't necessarily care about CEO Yi. At this time, Yi Xiangnan sent Secretary Wang home. Before starting the car, he looked at Sumu, bring Cymbidium Chinense to our place to stay for the time being. Just hire 2 part-time workers. There's no need to let the servants live at home. Sumu didn't listen carefully and asked casually, why? Yi Xiangnan stared at her and smiled, because it's inconvenient. Probably because it had been a long time, Sumu actually understood it instantly. She lowered her eyes and didn't speak anymore. When Yi Xiangnan wanted to say something, Cymbidium Chinense asked in a childish voice, Daddy, why is it inconvenient? So the two adults looked at each other. The atmosphere was still a little subtle. In the end, Yi Xiangnan smiled, you can ask your mother. Sumu was furious. It was clearly his problem. Chapter 5169. Sumu couldn't bear to listen to such words. Don't teach the child bad things. Being held in Sumu's arms, Cymbidium Chinense always felt that there was something different between her father and mother. As for what the difference was, she couldn't tell. Therefore, she looked at her mother with sparkling eyes and asked, will I be with Cymbidium Chinense in the future and never leave Cymbidium Chinense again? After asking, the little guy's nose turned sour. He plunged into his mother's arms and refused to come out. Sumu lowered her head and looked at the little guy in surprise. After comforting it for a while, the little guy seemed to be very angry. Yi Xiangnan smiled and said, he may be angry with you. Sumu looked surprised and lowered her head. Cymbidium Chinense, is he angry with me? Cymbidium Chinense didn't make a sound. That meant that he was angry. Sumu coaxed him for a long time, but it didn't work. Yi Xiangnan gloated and said, look, he's ignoring you. You're too cruel. Sumu was quite dissatisfied with him. Yi Xiangnan, don't say a few words. Once you talk, he becomes even more excited. Yi Xiangnan smiled and said, I won't talk anymore. You can coax him to sleep at night and you'll know how clingy he is. Sumu didn't say anything else. She looked at the little guy in her arms. Her heart was soft, reluctant, distressed and guilty. It was her fault, or in other words, her uselessness that made Cymbidium Chinense so sad. She put her face on Cymbidium Chinense's little face and said very gently and sincerely, I won't leave in the future, okay? Really? Cymbidium Chinense's little face was full of disbelief. Sumu nodded and said, I won't leave. I'll take Cymbidium Chinense with me wherever I go. Cymbidium Chinense was very happy. He hugged his mother tightly with his two little arms. Yi Xiangnan, who was in the front row, suddenly felt a little jealous. He was jealous that Cymbidium Chinense could get Sumu's gentleness. He coughed lightly and said, how old are you? You're going to get married and have children soon. Why are you still so clingy with your mother? Cymbidium Chinense was also familiar with him and talked back. Sun is only 5 years old. Yes, have you found all the girls you like at the nursery? Yi Xiangnan snorted softly. If there is, then you can't hug other girls to show your loyalty to her. Yi Sun was stunned. After a long time, he asked softly, can't I even hug my mother? Yi Xiangnan snorted. What do you think? Cymbidium Chinense cautiously said, Mom, little May won't be happy if I hug you. Sumu was surprised and amused. What was her son talking about? Little May? Was he serious? Cymbidium Chinense was indeed serious. She eagerly looked at Sumu, Mom, Xiao Mei is very beautiful. Hence, Sumu called out to Yi Xiangnan softly. CEO Yi smiled and said, aren't you good at educating your son? You're educating him now. Sumu said in a low voice, I'm talking to you seriously. Yi Xiangnan smiled as he drove. Sumu, you probably don't understand men very well. For men, no, for children, it's very easy to like someone. It's nothing serious. You don't have to worry like an old hen. Old hen? Sumu didn't want to talk to him. She sat in the back seat and didn't make a sound. Even if Cymbidium Chinense coaxed her, she wouldn't make a sound. When they arrived at the villa, CEO Yi got out of the car and took the little Cymbidium Chinense in his arms. He took a look at his wife and smiled. Are you still angry? I dare not. Sumu put on her coat and followed him. Yi Xiangnan looked back at her. Button up your coat. Chapter 5170. Yi Xiangnan looked back at her and said, button up your coat. She tensed up silently and looked at Yi Xiangnan who was glaring at her. She was quite speechless. It was just a few steps. After entering, Yi Xiangnan turned on the air conditioner in the house. When it was warm, he allowed them to take off their coats. He accompanied Cymbidium Chinense and asked Sumu to cook, saying that there was food in the fridge. Sumu went to the kitchen and carefully made a chicken soup. She also fried 2 delicious side dishes and a cucumber with garlic sauce, which was also Cymbidium Chinense's favorite. After it was done, she brought it to the dining table. Yi Xiangnan sat down with Cymbidium Chinense and said, intentionally or unintentionally, I will also learn to cook in the future. Sumu sat opposite him and was a little confused about what he meant. Yi Xiangnan coughed lightly and said, in the future, except for the hourly cleaning workers, there will be no fixed servants. Cymbidium chinense will also live with us. Of course, if you feel that it is particularly hard, we can still use servants. Sumu thought that he had something important to announce. After all, it was still this matter. She slowly ate a mouthful of rice and said, if you have no problem, I have no problem. Now, work doesn't seem to be too busy, and the time can also be coordinated. This problem seemed to be settled just like that. Yi Xiangnan gave her a small bowl of soup and said, nourish yourself. You are so thin that you are like pork ribs. Sumu had just slightly changed her opinion of him. At this moment, she felt that he was still the same, so she snorted and took it. Cymbidium chinense looked at this and looked at that. He always felt that there was something different between his father and mother. As for what was different, he couldn't tell. However, the way his father treated his mother was the same as how he treated Xiaomei. He obviously liked her very much, but he was too stupid to say it, or he just bullied her. It would be fun to bully him. Cymbidium chinense was very happy. Once it was happy, it no longer felt weak from its illness. After dinner, it pestered its mother, asking for a hug, a story, and a bath for the baby. There were no servants at home, and the dishes were washed by the Honorable CEO Yi. Looking at the greasy dishes, he really wanted to change his decision, but it was only the first day, and he was a person who cared about his face, so he had to endure it no matter what. This was young Master Ye's first time doing this kind of housework. He wasn't so stupid that he couldn't do it, but he wasn't very skilled either. After washing the dishes, his body was full of water, so he went upstairs to take a shower and changed into a set of home clothes. He lay on the sofa in the bedroom and read a book for a while. After a long time, Sumu still hadn't come back, so Yi Xiangnan went to the children's room. Oh my god, Sumu slept in the children's room. Was she not going to come back? Yi Xiangnan was speechless. He sat on the bed and touched his son's face, then pinched Sumu's nose. Sumu woke up and looked at him. I'll wait for you in the bedroom. Try not to come back. He threatened in a low voice and left. He was probably afraid that he would wake up his son and let him see such a scene. After he left, Sumu closed her eyes. She was still thinking about Man Ri. What was going on? Yi Xiannan really couldn't be missing even a day. Cymbidium chinense just came back. She and Cymbidium chinense hadn't seen each other for a long time. Besides, she wasn't very good looking. He also said that she was full of ribs. She really didn't know why he was in such a mood. But Sumu didn't dare not to go back. Yi Xiangnan was really crazy when he was crazy. She was still a little afraid of him. Chapter 5171. Memorize. She carefully got up and took the temperature of the Cymbidium chinense again. Finally, after confirming that there was no problem, she returned to the master bedroom. As soon as the door opened, Sumu saw Yi Xiangnan leaning against the sofa, playing with his phone lazily. When he saw her coming over, he patted the seat beside him and gestured for her to come over. Before Sumu, who was sitting beside him, could start talking, he said, Cymbidium chinense already has a girl he likes. As a parent, you should let go early. Don't raise your child to be a mommy's boy. Xiaomei won't like it. Sumu was speechless. Wasn't Yi Xiangnan only 5 years old? CEO Yi smiled again. I don't feel good. Don't you still have me? I can't take it. Sumu sat beside him, her head lowered as if she was thinking about something. When Yi Xiangnan came over, she blocked him. He reached out and stroked her hair. His voice was slightly hoarse. What's wrong? You don't want to because the Cymbidium chinense is here? Sumu glanced at him. What are you thinking about? I have something to tell you. Say it. Yi Xiangnan put his hands behind his head and leaned against the back of the sofa. Sumu bit her lower lip and thought for a moment before saying softly, I want to bring Xiaowen, that Xiaowen from the Sun News Agency, whom you've met before, to the station to be my assistant. As she spoke, Yi Xiangnan looked at her. Sumu looked at him. Do you agree or not? He smiled and stretched out a hand, caressing her hair from time to time. His voice was lazy. Don't you want an assistant? I'll arrange one for you. Secretary Wang is not bad, right? I'll let her go to your place. She will be absolutely loyal and will not betray you. Don't. She is doing well in your place. Won't she be demoted a lot if she follows me? Sumu couldn't bear it. Yi Xiangnan smiled again. No problem. I thought you were going to poach reporter Lu. What if? Sumu turned sideways and asked, probably because the topic had been triggered. Yi Xiangnan smiled. It's not impossible, but Mrs. Yi has to pay a little price. After all, reporter Lu is a dangerous person. Do you think Cheng Zheng will let her go? Men always understood other men. Chang Zhang, this uncouth man, never hid anything in his eyes. It was obvious that he had a strong interest in Sister Hong. Even though he had gotten her before, she didn't buy it. He still wanted to get her again. Since she wasn't willing, he could only force her. Yi Xiannan understood these tricks very well, which was why he said Lu Hong was a dangerous person. Actually, even if he was Lu Hong's boss, he could not protect her all the time. After all, this was a private matter. Hearing that, Sumu was a little worried. Do you want me to talk to Chang Zhang? How dare you? Yi Xiangnan pulled her over and pinched her chin. You can't wait to avoid a man like Chang Zhang, and you still want to go to him? Do you know what business he runs? Sumu was stunned. Yi Xiangnan said calmly, this man was very lucky to have met the 7th master of Yen and saved him. The 7th master of Yen was getting old and didn't have any children, so Chang Zhang treated him as half a son. Now, all the businesses are managed by Chang Zhang. Do you know what kind of business he does now? 7th master Yen? That was a well-known figure. It was impossible for Sumu not to know about him. She was stunned for a moment because she didn't expect Chang Zhang to take over the 7th master Yan's position. No wonder she couldn't move for a moment. Chapter 5172. It's not that she can't move, it's just that her roots are intertwined. Once she moves, her whole body will be affected. I can only say that money is a good thing. The money in Master Cheng's hands has opened up a lot of joints. Yi Xiangnan touched her face. I heard that your sister is with Chang Zhang now. It seems that she has also contracted a bad disease. Sumu was stunned for a moment. The last time she saw Su Jian, she felt that her complexion was not very good. Even with makeup, she still looked a little pale and emaciated. She thought that she was on a diet. How could she know that she had contracted a bad disease? She asked in a low voice, how did you know? Yi Xiangnan smiled. I am in the media industry. I naturally have this kind of news. Sumu was a little absent-minded. Yi Xiangnan rubbed her hair. Are you worried about her? She said no, only that it was a pity. Even if Su Jian was not a good girl, she was still related to her by blood. If she was infected with that bad disease, she would probably be ruined. She was silent for a long time. Okay, go to sleep. Why am I talking so much with you? Don't you just want a little assistant? He pulled her up. Don't think about these things. Chang Zhang is Chang Zhang. You are you. Su Jian is also willing to follow Chang Zhang. In the future, when Chang Zhang falls, she can't run away. Sumu looked at him. Chang Zhang will fall. Of course, do you think that they are useless? Yi Xiangnan put his hands behind his head and said softly, they have lived too happily for too long. They really think that this world is really under their control and they can do whatever they want. When he spoke, although his voice was very soft, there was a trace of ruthlessness in it. Even Sumu was shocked when she heard it. She always felt that there was something wrong with Yi Xiangnan. He tilted his head and looked at her. Why are you suddenly looking at me like this? Are you secretly in love with me? Boring. Sumu snorted softly, unwilling to pay attention to him. Yi Xiangnan also smiled and didn't say anything else. He probably had something on his mind. After she fell asleep, he got up and went to the balcony to smoke 2 cigarettes. He then went to check on the Cymbidium chinense before returning to the bedroom. He lay down and thought about a few things before going to sleep. Early in the morning, when Yi Xiangnan opened his eyes, Sumu was no longer by his side. His fingers gently touched the pillow beside him. It was still a little warm. He took the pillow in his arms and deeply sniffed it. It was filled with the fragrance of her hair. Smelling the scent, he actually felt somewhat satisfied. He lay there for a while, then got up, went to the cloakroom to change into a set of clothes, and went downstairs. On the stairs, he saw that the Cymbidium chinense was already neatly dressed and sitting on the sofa, holding a children's book in his hand. Sumu was in the kitchen making breakfast. As Yi Xiangnan went downstairs, there was a trace of a smile on the corner of his mouth. He found that he quite liked this kind of atmosphere. There were no servants around, and it seemed more comfortable just the 3 of them. He touched the little guy's head. Are you better? The Cymbidium chinense was very happy to say that he was already better. Then he hugged Yi Xiangnan's arm and asked his father to tell him a story. Yi Xiangnan endured and told him 2 stories, and then he left his son to find a wife. He hugged her slender waist from behind. What did you make for breakfast? Sumu wanted to break away from him, but he didn't let her. I like to eat Western food, en? Her face was a little hot. She was not used to such closeness. The Cymbidium chinense will see it. Shouldn't some hugs between husband and wife make the child feel safer? He leaned close to her and murmured. Chapter 5173. 1 second to remember. Sumu was speechless. She said in a low voice, Yi Xiangnan. Yes. I'm here. He said softly, what's wrong? Are you shy? What I want to say is, don't disturb me making breakfast. Cymbidium chinense is going to be late. She deliberately said with a straight face. However, Yi Xiangnan was not angry. Instead, he nodded as if she was right. That's true. Mrs. Yi, Cymbidium chinense, and I will be waiting for your breakfast. He left gracefully. Sumu was a little speechless. Why did she and Yi Xiangnan look like a loving couple now? She bit her lip and thought for a while. Then she continued to make breakfast. During breakfast, the atmosphere was also very good. It was so good that Sumu was not used to it. It was as if they had been married many years ago and had raised a child together for several years. It felt like they had a tacit understanding. She was not used to it, so she felt uncomfortable and awkward. After getting in the car and sending Cymbidium chinense to school, Yi Xiangnan opened the door of the front passenger seat. Sit in the front. As he said that, he looked at her. Sumu was still a little uncomfortable. She wanted to say that she would sit in the back, but he insisted. Get in the car. I have something to tell you. She nodded and then sat next to him. Yi Xiangnan drove the car. After a while, he said softly, there is a family dinner at my parents' place tonight. Yi Hui and Shen Wenxuan will be there. They also invited us. Sumu, are you okay with it? She looked at him sideways. He smiled. It's about Yi Hui and Shen Wenxuan's wedding. The Shen family will also come. Sumu, I hope you will go. He used the word hope and did not use a forced tone like before. It was quite an improvement. Sumu was a little touched. She did not say anything. Yi Xiangnan continued, our wedding is scheduled for Christmas a month later. What do you think? It happened to be a red light, so he grabbed her hand and played with it gently. Sumu tilted her head and looked at him. Yi Xiangnan, what are you thinking? What do you want? He stared at her and laughed after a while. Don't you know what I want? She looked down. What if I can't afford it? Yi Xiangnan smiled. Mrs. Yi, you can afford it. It's just a matter of whether you want to or not. He suddenly leaned closer and said, a little intimately, are you afraid, eh? Sumu sat up straight, or even stiff. She bit her lip and said, I didn't. Yi Xiangnan smiled. Really? If not, why are you so stiff? No. Sumu was a little unrecognizable. Yi Xiangnan, I don't want to talk to you. Just when the green light turned green, he let her go with a good temper. He smiled while driving, why do you look like Xiaomei from the Cymbidium chinense class? I didn't bully you. She turned her head angrily. After a moment, Yi Xiangnan's voice was a little low. I hope I can introduce you to others in such a formal occasion. You are my wife. I don't want to be sneaky, unless you think it's a shameful thing to be Mrs. Yi. Sumu, you know what I mean. The past is the past. I don't care about it. You don't need to care about it. You don't need to care about others. You will be my wife in the future. No one can look down on you. Sumu kept silent for a long time and said with a nasal voice, it sounds very touching. He sighed. I can't hear the slightest touch in your tone. Mrs. Yi, you are really difficult to please. Chapter 5174. 1 second to remember. He sighed, I can't hear the slightest feeling in your tone. Mrs. Yi, you are really hard to please. I didn't ask you to please me. She said stiffly, you don't have to. Then, go to find another woman? He smiled, are you willing to do that? Then you will quarrel with me again. Sumu, I have already figured out your little tricks. You just don't want to leave me. You do all this just to attract my attention and stimulate me, right? Sumu was flabbergasted. It took him a long time to find his voice. Yi Xiannan, aren't you a little too confident? Finally, I am happy. Mrs. Yi, didn't I say that you are hard to please? He said. So Sumu didn't say anything until the car stopped in front of Star's building. When she got off, she said in a low voice, shall I wait for you in the hall after work? Go to my office. He smiled and held her hand, wait in the hall. It's too distant. Sumu was going to get off, but she couldn't help saying in a low voice, in fact, Yi Xiangnan, you don't have to do this. We are just, aren't we husband and wife? He looked straight at her and asked in a low voice, we work together, raise children together, eat and sleep together. What's the difference between us and other couples? Tell me, Sumu. So I treat you better. What's wrong for us to be closer? Hearing these words, Sumu was speechless. After a while, she said with difficulty, I'm not ready yet. You don't need to prepare. I will do it. Yi Xiangnan's voice was hoarse and pleasant. If you don't know how to fall in love, I will teach you. Sumu looked at him eagerly. After a long time, she whispered, Yi Xiangnan, do you have a fever? He caught her hand at once, and there was a little annoyance in his eyes. Sumu didn't dare to provoke him anymore. She lowered her eyes and said, I'll find you after work. Only then did he let go of her, but he still looked unhappy. CEO Yi had to take revenge when he was unhappy. He quickly got out of the car and grabbed her hand, wanting to show off. So there was such a scene in the hall of the first floor of Starlight. CEO Yi held Mrs. Ye's hand forcibly. Mrs. Yi resisted in a low voice with a look of reluctance. Yi Xiangnan, others are watching. Did I embarrass you? He said sourly. Am I not handsome enough? Am I not respectable enough? He dragged her along and walked quite quickly. They were surrounded by people who had dropped their jaws. CEO Yi dotes on your wife so much. Is this a one-sided love? It seems so. Mrs. Yi doesn't look very happy. Does she think President Yi is not good-looking enough? Master Chang is good-looking and generous. He is more generous than CEO Yi. He gave out 10 billion yuan and Mrs. Yi had to sign the prenuptial agreement. It's so pitiful. If it were me, I would choose to be Mrs. Chang. Me too. That Chang Zheng looks so strong. Could it be that CEO Yi can't compare to her? Ah. Just thinking about this possibility makes me want to die. All these gossips came into Yi Xiangnan's ears. CEO Yi was about to explode. In the elevator, he pinched Sumu's chin and pushed her to the corner of the elevator. He trapped her with his tall body. Is Chang Zheng in good health? Sumu was very speechless. He didn't care about the staff of Starlight and came to vent his anger on her. Yi Xiangnan's voice was hoarse. Is there something between you and him? Chapter 5175. Updated quickly, Sumu was speechless. She pushed him and said, Yi Xiangnan, you're crazy. If you want to know, ask Su Jian. As soon as she said that, his face looked much better. He pinched her chin and asked softly, is that a denial? She didn't want to talk to him. He was crazy. It's time for work. Sumu's face was dark. She was unhappy. However, Yi Xiangnan chuckled. Actually, you can ask reporter Lu, don't you think so? Sumu was speechless. Yi Xiangnan, you can ask Chang Zheng if you want to know if you're a psycho or not. He looked at her and suddenly said, is it because I'm not healthy enough and I'm not generous enough to you? Sumu was simply ridiculous. He, the CEO of Stars Entertainment, blocked her in the elevator and asked her this kind of question when she was about to go to work. She still wanted to say something, but she had already made up her mind. Let's go to my office. Sumu was quite guarded. She didn't know what he was going to do. She found out 10 minutes later. Yi Xiangnan called Shen Wenxuan over and drafted a thick stack of documents with hundreds of pages. It took a whole morning for a team of more than 20 lawyers and a team of 8 accountants to finish it. It was so big that it shocked the whole of Stars Entertainment. The whole of Stars Entertainment knew that CEO Yi and Mrs. Yi had signed another prenuptial agreement. This time, they didn't know what kind of shameful content it was. At noon, the content was all prepared. There were a total of 12 thick books. Shen Wenxuan was also very surprised, but he tried his best to communicate with Sumu in a calm and professional tone. Miss Su, CEO Yi transferred all his assets under his name to your name. The market value is 132 billion, which means that CEO Yi has nothing other than the shares of Stars Entertainment. Yi Xiangnan sat on the sofa and said faintly, he only has a bitch wife and a well-behaved son. Even Shen Wenxian wanted to burst into laughter, the crowd wanted to burst out laughing, but they couldn't laugh out loud, so they could only endure it. Sumu was about to explode. He was acting like this just because someone said that Chang Zheng's health was good. She felt a little ashamed and turned to leave. She was unwilling to sign the document. Yi Xiannan quickly walked over and caught her. Then, the people in the president's office all tactfully left, including Shen Wenxuan. Yi Xiangnan was still holding on to Sumu and whispered, are you angry? Sumu was extremely ashamed. She turned her head and said, let go of me, Yi Xiangnan. You're a jerk. How am I a bastard? He pressed her to the side and whispered into her ear, I just wanted to show that I'm not worse than him. It's just that I'm a little bigger. How am I a jerk? You tell me, huh? Sumu couldn't stand it. She turned her head and said, I'm going to work. Everyone in Stars Entertainment knows that you're here with me. Other than competing with money, don't you think I have to prove something else? He whispered. Sumu bit her lip and was speechless. Yi Xiangnan said in a low voice, you're not going to say anything? So, you don't acknowledge me? Sumu still didn't say anything. He laughed. Are you angry? Then, I'll coax you, okay? Sumu turned her head and said in a low voice, Yi Xiangnan, can you let me go? I don't want to let you go. I'll let you go if I can. His voice was hot. Sumu, sometimes I want to strangle you to death. But, I feel that it's too easy for you. You're so heartless. As he said that, he carried her and walked to the resting room. Chapter 5176. Later on, Sumu got angry. Because Yi Xiangnan didn't let her go to work for a day, proving that he wasn't worse than Master Chang in other aspects except for his financial resources. He proved it, but Sumu couldn't clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. He was probably busy, so he directly locked her in the washroom and went through the documents in a meeting. Sumu stayed in the lounge board for the whole morning. At noon, he asked her to accompany him, but Sumu didn't want to remember the whole process. When it was almost time to get off work, she went to the station to report. It was especially shameful, but to her surprise, Xiaowen actually came over. Seeing Sumu coming over, she was a little excited. It was CEO Yi who called personally, so I came over. Sumu was also surprised. Then, she reached out and patted Xiaowen's little head. Then do your best here. The treatment at Stars Entertainment was much better than at Sun Entertainment, so Xiaowen was naturally willing. Moreover, there was such a big backer like Sumu. When she packed her things and came over, those people were envious of her. Xiaowen also felt that Sumu was especially hard-working. Those people who said that she couldn't enter a rich family after getting a divorce all shut their mouths. This person, Sumu, was doing very well. Xiaowen also felt especially proud and made a fuss about treating Sumu to a meal. Although Sumu was angry, she still remembered what Yi Xiangnan said to her. Tonight, Yi Hui was going to discuss the details of the wedding. The Shen family would send someone over, so she told Xiaowen that they would call Sister Hong for a drink another day. Xiaowen covered her face and said that she had changed. She said that she knew how to enjoy life and had learned bad things from CEO Yi. Sumu snorted. You're so impolite, aren't you? In the future, you'll be my assistant. You should be more respectful to your future boss. Little one was especially subservient. Sumu smiled. I was just joking with you. All right, I'll inform the station head that I'll knock off first. She actually had a headache. If this went on, when would she be able to become a good host? She felt that Yi Xiangnan had been dragging her down. Later, when she sat in the car after work, she started complaining. Yi Xiangnan smiled. Take your time. This host won't go back and have children. You can learn from her for a few more years. I'll be old in a few years. Will I still be able to appear on camera? She asked softly. Then, she looked up at Yi Xiangnan. Yi Xiangnan seemed to seriously consider this, then laughed. You make it sound like a problem. There was a mischievous look in his eyes. But, I'm already ugly now. When I'm older, I can count on my temperament. What do you think? Sumu knew that she didn't look good, but she was still angry that he said it so bluntly. When the car stopped at a red light, she didn't know why but she pinched his face with both hands. Yi Xiangnan, you're too despicable. He didn't make a sound. Even his breathing was clean as he stared at her. Sumu immediately realized that she was inappropriate. She retracted her fingers and coughed lightly. I didn't do it on purpose. I know. His voice was slightly deep. But, Sumu, does this mean that we're a little closer? She didn't want to reply, but he insisted on staring at her with a pressing gaze. Sumu leaned against the back of the chair and said softly, the light is green, Yi Xiangnan. He continued to look at her with a clear gaze, but his voice was frighteningly deep. I'll deal with you when we get back. After that, it started to drizzle. The black Bentley drove in the drizzling night, reflecting the neon lights. It looked a little romantic. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.